Good evening and welcome to the 20th meeting of fiscal year 2026. At this time, I would like to now call the meeting to order and begin by introducing the members of the planning board and our staff. Would you like to begin?
Sure. Cheryl Tagayas, secretary.
Sean Fahey, member.
Al Munger, member.
And Meredith Hall serving as chair. And tonight on Zoom, we also have Maggie. Is that you?
You're on mute, Maggie.
Sorry, Maggie Oldfield, member.
Great. And tonight with us also on Zoom, we have our planning director, Liz, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Planning director, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we can move to our administrative items. First, we have our meeting minutes. We had 4 sets of minutes from our last meeting that we had deferred. And we have meeting minutes from March 12th and 26th. I have not had a chance to look at the 12th and the 26th. Sean, I know you're set with those. Cheryl and Maggie, were you able to review the, it would be October 9th, October 23rd, the October 27th, and November 13th. So if we'd like to go through those, starting with October 9th, I had just a few minor things. On the first page, under public comment, the fourth line down, it says he added. It just needs the S removed.
Okay.
This would be he added. 2 and page 3, second paragraph, first sentence. It was the same thing. I think there must have been something with the typewriter.
Yeah.
Actually, the last line in the first paragraph also, then reached, the S needs to be crossed off that. Mr. Guy's mentioned in the next line, that S also needed to be removed. And then in the fourth paragraph on the fourth line, she added needs to be added. That was just something that was sticking. It was sticking.
You're good at catching these.
And let's
Sometimes
see,
I think when you're trying to show that it's crossed out and what you're adding, it gets
right.
lost in there.
Right, exactly. And then, let's see, I think. And then, okay, under Milton Village Local Historic District discussion, Mr. Loeffler, it's actually Lawfler is Mr. Loeffler. And then it's also down under where it begins, Ms. Oldfield says, Mr. Wild, the second line, Loeffler, is spelled incorrectly. It's Lawfler. And that's all I had on those. Did anybody else have anything on October 9th? Okay. So maybe, I don't know if we want to do these individually or all together. Super. Okay, we'll keep going. So then October 23rd, under staff update, Ms. Manning asks, there's an S again, that friendly S. And in the following sentence, Ms. Tagayas suggested that needs to lose the S. First sentence, first line in the next paragraph, Ms. Manning discussed that needs to lose the S. And then the first sentence in the last paragraph, Ms. Tagayas explained that needs to lose the S. Then on the very last paragraph of the second page, Mr. Tagayas explained that the MPIC recommends the formation, it's actually the second sentence where it says, she said there is a lot of content. It just says a lot content, so I think it needs an of in between lot and content.
Okay.
There was, this is, there were two paragraphs, I know, I understand you were trying to cross it out, but I thought it might be important to include on the first paragraph of the third page.
Is it possible for Liz or
Yeah, to
pull
bring it
those
up. Yep,
The typos, I don't think I need to see, but if you
No.
want to bring
Yeah.
a paragraph back, I'd
Yeah.
like to see it.
I might,
I might be
there
able
were
to pull it up
two on
myself
this,
here,
which I
but-
just thought were important.
What would you like me to do? Pull up the page?
Can you pull up the minutes from the third page of October 3rd?
Okay. October 23rd?
Yes. And this was just for.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's it.
I just want this.
How's that? Good? And then page 3?
And then page 3, please. And then it's the very first paragraph.
Right here?
Yes. And again, I thank Cheryl for going through this and taking a lot of this content out. But this is the first paragraph. Mr. Fahey says he wants to collaboratively create an article that they can say the planning board unanimously supports and does not want to rush creation of a committee that serves an important process. Ms. Hall said the planning board has a responsibility to extend the implementation timeframe. She says she didn't realize that last year, when the MPIC was being extended, that it should have been something that the planning board had voted on.
I thought there was some duplication, so can you just scroll back?
Yeah, if there is.
So must wait, recognize, So there's where it says to work collaboratively to create an article together, so I thought it was covered there, but if you don't think it's
Where-
covered there.
Where are you? I'm sorry.
The paragraph that
before?
begins with Mr. Fahey.
The second one on the second page?
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking on the
Right.
screen, so I'm not sure which page that is. It looks like second page, yeah, page 2. So where it says
Page 2.
Mr. Fahey recognizes,
That is important committee that the select board and planning initially proposed this committee.
and it says the process was rushed, so I thought
That's
that.
fine. That's
I thought that
fine.
was
Yep.
like kind of repetitive, so that's why.
I'm fine with that. Okay,
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure we had noted that, you know, the planning board had thought we would have had input on that. And then the next, which was sort of similar, and again, this,
It may be another one of those where I
Maybe it
just
might have
thought it was
been, yeah.
repetitive. I don't think I was trying to take out content.
no, right. Hold on, 1, 2, 3. On the fourth page, the third paragraph, if you could pull that up, Ms. Hall said she wants to make sure that communication is coming through.
I wasn't sure what that first sentence meant.
I know that doesn't really
It
make sense.
didn't make
Recommendations
sense to me,
to the planning board and collaborate with consultant.
and
Says the MPIC is volunteer. Yeah, that one, I don't know why, that I'm fine with, so,
Okay.
sorry.
okay, yeah.
And then just the last paragraph of that, where it says Ms. Manning provides,
It should be provided.
provided, that was, yeah,
Should
I had a
be.
D there, so provided. And then that was it for that one. And jump in, anyone. Yeah. Then the 27th, I don't think I didn't have anything on that. That was all
Okay.
fine. And then November 13th, under future meeting dates, Ms. Hull said the planning board it either needs to be will not be meeting the week of or will not meet. And you added, oh, you did take out cross that off, so will not meet. Never mind, Nora. Yeah, I didn't see that was crossed off. And then the second page, she is interested, the second line, she is interested in connecting with them about the 40B projects. And it should have I think, to better understand. So a two after and to better understand. On the same page, the second to last paragraph, which starts with Ms. Oldfield, the third line down, document from MAPC of the same. I think you had just said of same,
Okay.
so of the same. Sound better? And then the last paragraph, first line after discussed has an S. And then the second line after November 10th, she suggested that needs to lose that S.
So every time it changed
Sorry.
from present
Yeah.
tense to past tense, the S didn't
But didn't
get eliminated,
Yes.
okay.
And then introduction of Michael White, the second line, where it says on the second line, and he has been, I think you took out been trying to, but I think the been needs to stay in. He had been working to understand.
Okay.
So keeping the been in. And then that might have been, all right, on that last page under fiscal year 27 planning board budget, the second paragraph down from that, there's just it says Ms. Hall on the second line, Ms. Hall says, I think noted maybe that KP Law would sound better. Instead of, and then the last sentence, on that page, Ms. Hall seconded, that just needs to lose the S. I think.
Since I think these are mostly clerical, Liz,
Yeah.
do you think that you can pick these, you and Avanti can pick these up without a need for us to resubmit
Yeah.
them? Yeah, okay. All right.
One of us is gonna have to listen to the recording anyway, so
Sorry.
we'll get them that way.
Yeah, little minor
Okay.
things, but, okay, with that, if I could have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for October 9th, October 23rd, October 27th, and November 13th,
Some corrected?
as amended. Is
Amended and corrected, okay.
there a second?
Second.
All in favor? We have to do a roll call because Maggie's online, so Maggie,
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And myself, yes. Sorry, Hal, you're gonna be caught up really soon, so that was, sorry to go through, but we have just a lot of house cleaning tonight, housekeeping.
Mm-hmm. Good to get it done.
It is. So then our future meeting dates, we currently have scheduled are June 11th and June 25th.
We have the 28th as well, right? April, I mean.
Oh, I'm sorry, and we have
May-
May 28th, yes, I was jumping to June already. And May 28th is our our last meeting in
Can you repeat
May.
the June dates again?
June 11th and the 25th of June. Yes, the 28th. And then staff update, Liz.
Great, thank you so much. Apologies for not being there in person for your first meeting. Member Munger.
Oh,
It's just been a long week, so I kind of took advantage, especially with the rainy night. And typically what Avanti and I have tried to do, Hal, is to create a written report at least once a month for the board for this agenda topic. So that you'll see at the meeting on the 28th. I initially had high hopes to be able to have a written report every 2 weeks, but I got realistic real quick. And it's also good too, because it gives us as a staff the opportunity to kind of catch up on projects that each of us are working on individually, and just sort of, kind of get together on priorities and timelines and what have you. So just very quickly, the work with the MPO on the Vision Zero project at Granite Ave in East Squantum, or West Squantum rather, which I've updated folks in the past on. There's going to be a meeting next week on that project. They're trying to figure out the day right now. More than happy to bring anybody up to speed on that project with more detail. If they're interested, you can reach out to me separately. Don't have a ton of information on this, but there is a Housing Works grant being put together for the stretch between Guile Road and Reedsdale at Canton to do some infrastructure upgrade there. So that, I believe, is going in. I think that's kind of coming under the auspices of the engineering office and the DPW. Very busy with 2 signs already under the new bylaw for the Gardner School and for 2 Elliott. I had a great conversation today with the admin in the zoning office, Bill Donnelly, in terms of, how can we sync these things up? How can we make sure that once they're done with the sign review committee, that it doesn't sort of start all over again at day 1 for these applicants. So we had some really good conversations about that, and had a bit of a back and forth with Kathleen O'Donnell as well, kind of put her in the loop with all of the documentation, which can get confusing. So I need to be careful. I can't be duplicating like the zoning board's process, and I don't want to be duplicating their submittals or what have you. I don't want to create confusion. But with this being brand new, I really wanted to make sure that they had everything that I had as quickly as possible. So those are getting teed up, fingers crossed, for a zoning board hearing as potentially as early as June 18th. So that's pretty much as quick as you probably could go. And so you've got that library letter. It was really just a very quick reflection of the conversation that took place at the board's meeting probably 6 weeks ago now. Took me a bit to put it together. So that's in your folder. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. Some good progress on the housing production plan as well. I'll just kind of put in a plug. I know that's a later topic, but I'll put in a plug that it'll be easier for me if the 2 planning board reps are planning board members. I'm just throwing that out there. And so I know you guys want to have that conversation about that, about whether it's a member of the board or if it's a designee. I've got the contract. I worked with Nick on the contract for the zoning recodification. He's going to be able to get that money encumbered, and had a quick chat today. I can't even believe it. I literally have not caught my breath from Monday night. And he was like, yeah, if you guys are going to do anything for the fall, like we're going to need it like in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So my thought on that was, if there is something that the board really wants to go with quickly, well, if we've got KP under contract soon, then perhaps that's, could be folded into that scope. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of anything, but that's just a thought. And then the last thing is the EFA process that MAPC that they worked on for us in the fall. I've been kind of playing phone tag with them to figure out where that approval is. So more to come on that. So that's pretty much it, guys.
That's great. And I just want to say, Liz, great job at the town meeting. You really, I thought, did a wonderful job with the presentation. So, and having questions fired, from members, you were very well prepared and handled everything very well. So, any questions for Liz on anything?
No, I just want to make one comment. I think she provided the most abbreviated response at a town meeting to any question that's ever been asked. And I hope we all could follow the model that you have set forth. Great.
I feel I I was just talking to someone about that today. I said, I've got to find out who that was because I feel like I need to apologize because I am never that abrupt, ever, ever.
I think your answer was accurate. That's all that matters. It was, so anyhow,
And I think the members appreciated the brevity, so.
yeah, great job. Yeah, for a long article that, you know, it's like everything else, probably true for all of our work, you know, what you and Hal do and what Meredith does and what Maggie and I do. Preparation is really key to everything. And your presentation was so well prepared with what was up on the screen for people to read. And it uncomplicated what could have been very complicated. If we didn't have that up on the screen and you hadn't created the flow charts, Liz, it would have been very difficult for the members to understand, you know, how do you go about, you know, getting a sign permit? You made it simple. So to you and Avante and everybody involved in the preparation side of it, great job.
And even the images at the end I thought were good.
Yeah.
Right? Just a kind of.
100% Hal. Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
I had a question. Liz, what was that last topic you covered with? I didn't pick that up. The last one of your
So
staff
that,
update?
so that was the, catch me guys if I've got this wrong, economic feasibility
Oh,
analysis?
okay.
EFA?
Oh, EFA, that's what okay, all right. I didn't catch the acronym. Okay, thank you.
And we're just waiting on a letter from them with their supporting. And is that, Liz, did they communicate directly with HLC? Or is that for up to us to close that loop with them and issue that letter?
That's what I'm trying to understand with Adam Pletz, who is the housing manager at MAPC.
Okay.
So I called him, he called me back, we just haven't connected, so I'll hopefully have at least an update.
And they've done it for
It
other
doesn't-
communities, so they'll be very familiar with the process, so that's great. Okay. Good. Okay, anything on that, you're good on that report, Liz? That's the staff update?
Yep.
All right, so next, we have public comment.
Can I jump in before
oh, yeah,
public comment?
yeah,
Because I'm just noting the upcoming dates, 5/28 and 6/11, and I'll be away for both of those.
That's
So
right,
I am going to walk the Camino, and I'll be gone from 5/26 to 6/14, so I won't be present for those two meetings.
Okay. That's impressive, yes. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
anyhow, you know why I'm doing it.
That's,
But the only comment I had on the meeting minutes, the two that were in the folder for today, and you know, when you get around to looking at them, it's real simple, but there's a comment that is attributed to me in regard to the MPIC, and it reads that, you know, Sean thinks the MPIC is an advisory committee. That doesn't reflect what I said. I know it's an advisory committee. It's not a thought. I mean, that was an article we passed in town meeting, so I know it's an advisory committee. That's the only thing I'd like that to be corrected for the record.
So you'd like, think to probably to,
However,
Understand.
however
Or
the wording
something.
reflects, yeah, it's not a thought. It was a statement, really, more than anything else.
stated that, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that'd be great. That was it. Other than that, those two, when you get around to it,
And
because
that's
I don't
on the
want to.
12th or the 26th,
I can't remember. I can't remember which one it was.
I'll
But
look at
anyhow,
it when I-
other than that, I didn't have any other comment on those minutes, and I don't want to slow down the process of
Okay.
getting them out, so.
That's great. Thank you. All right. So now, if there is anyone, we don't have anyone here to speak, but I don't know if anyone wants to speak who's online. If there's any comments or questions, you can raise your hand. I'm not seeing any.
Can you guys see the participants? There's no attendees.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, so with that, next item on the agenda is our annual committee appointments, which typically, many of the appointments that our committee, we sit on various committees, we probably are aware. They tend to be one-year appointments, but some people are either on a, they're assigned to a committee right now. So the question is, do people want to stay on that committee or, or do they want to do something different? So that's the time that we'll talk about that. Currently, Cheryl sits on the CPC. She's as our representative. Are you on affordable housing? Is there an affordable housing committee assignment? No. Okay.
No. So, right now, it's just the CPC.
Just the CPC, which I think that's, and part of, I think what's good is there's certain cycles of timing of things, so,
So for the CPC, if, in the event that someone else wanted to do it, it's, the applications are due, at the end
May
of the
20th.
month. So they haven't been reviewed yet. So
Okay.
it's actually,
it would be an,
it would be an okay time to change if somebody else really wanted to do
Okay.
it. I don't mind rotation of committees, but I'm happy to continue with it. It's
Okay.
interesting, and it's actually interesting to hear all of the projects that come in. But if it is a good time to do it, this is it, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the timing.
I've been on the Open Space and Recreation Committee. We are hopefully wrapping this up. We're in a final phase. This has been going on for 4 years. So I'm happy to stay on because I think what we're doing right now is so important because it is cleaning up all the maps of our town because even the Conservation Commission does not know what is necessarily what is conservation, what is in conservation, what is protected conservation in perpetuity. We're looking at what is DCR land, and there's confusion on some of the DCR parcels, so I'm been working to reach out to DCR to try to get a whole list. We also dissolved our land trust. Milton had a land trust, that was dissolved. Some of those parcels went to the Wildlands organization, and then some went to the Concom. So I'm trying to get a colored map, so people, from the Parks Department can say, gosh, could we put a playground somewhere? And they'll know what's town-owned, what's not in conservation, and just make it really transparent and user-friendly for the residents.
See it over the finish line.
So I would like to see it over the finish line, but if somebody wants to step in, I'm happy to.
That's like what I said with the MPIC in the last year or two. So it makes sense in this case, I think, for continuity, just like I made the case for continuity in the past.
And then so Jim Davis had been serving on the Capital Committee, so that we do need to put somebody onto that committee. That's actually a committee that meets before, it meets early, so it's before people's, have to get to work. It's really interesting. That was the first committee I served on, and it was really interesting because you see, and they're now doing like a 5-year projection of capital needs in the town. So it might be the fire department and, if they need another ladder truck, it could be DPW, it could be Council on Aging, it could be the schools, but the schools are, capital projects. So it's really interesting because there's money that gets funded and it's voted on by that committee. So it's very interesting to sort of be an advocate in planning funds. We've always said, that's something that's important and sometimes we feel like we don't get funded for the studies that we need to do. So
What's
that,
the frequency of that? Is that monthly?
so that, what's good about that is like right now they're not they won't, it's a monthly meeting typically. As you get closer to the, the budget cycle and to, certain deadlines for the town and town meeting, they meet more frequently. So that does seem to pick up at budget time. But it's really just a monthly, and Richard Wells was chairing it for years. I don't know who, is Megan, maybe Megan's gonna chair it now, or I forget who they said was gonna step in, because it's a lot of work just sort of tracking where we are, and is trying to, fund some of these really important things. And some things just keep getting deferred year after year. And then some years we have, whether it's more free cash or, able to be funded. More money put towards that. So that's available.
Okay.
Sean, you were taking a little break, so you are,
There's two that I was considering volunteering for. One is to fill Jim's spot on the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, and the other is the Housing Production Committee. Those are two that I'd volunteer for, and, but, I mean, this is a discussion amongst all of us to
right.
make sure that we, fill there's a lot of roles. It's not like there's a shortage, because you were on 2 last year, I think Maggie's on 2 last year, so it's,
I was on an ad hoc for a bit too, the town farm, actually
Right.
that wasn't, you were for the planning board there. But there's been times where the master plan implementation committee also had a seat on different committees.
yeah.
So there were times, when I had another one picked up, so, so one feels
I
like
think I was on
for
it
me
for the
right
historical
now.
commission and you were on it for planning, maybe. That was-
Something like that, but, I'm happy to do, another one, but, I also, it's up for discussion for anyone.
And then Maggie, do you want to talk about the committees you've been serving on and just talk a little bit about what those are
Yeah,
about?
so I am on the Climate Action Planning Committee, and it's been a few years now, and we are getting close to finalizing our plan. We sort of got derailed a little bit, in my opinion, trying to fund grants and whatnot, but we are making some progress on it. And we've had a lot of turnover on the committee, and also the committee has expanded in its membership, which has caused some problems getting a quorum at times. And so it hasn't quite progressed as quickly as I thought it was going to progress. So I would stay on that committee, and I'm hopeful that at some point we will finish the climate action plan, and then it would be brought forward to town meeting to be adopted. And then, then I'm not sure what the long range plan is for this committee. I think once it's adopted, then I would think that perhaps the committee would cease to exist. So I'm going to stay on that. In the Milton Budget Coordination Committee, as far as being the representative from the planning board, there has not been a lot of input at this point in time for a planning board representative. The charge was to review the fiscal budget every year, and to have better communication, primarily for the school committee and the select board. And again, we got off topic a little bit because we just started talking about the FY27 budget, and we haven't really made any financial policy decisions at this point in time. But as a planning board rep, there's not a lot to do. That this committee's not. There's not a lot of heavy lifting on this committee for a planning board member. But I have found it interesting. I've learned a lot about the budgets, and and I like having interaction with a broad range of committees and town staff. So I would be willing to sit on that one too. But as I said, it's not a lot of heavy lifting. So if I'm needed on another committee, I could do that too. So.
And anything that,
Yeah, I
you
looked into it
feel-
a little bit and clicked on the links that Liz provided. The CPC would be something that I'd be interested in.
Yep.
And then the budget coordination, if Maggie would like to step down from that, that'd be something. And then the master plan committee. Those are the three that were top of my list if people want to discuss that, but those were my interest late.
So I'd be interested also, in
the housing production plan,
the housing production plan.
that's,
Yeah, but if Sean, you're interested in that, I think Liz had 2 seats from the planning board, or 2 people from the planning board. So how were you were interested, what's your top one?
Probably the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee.
All right,
That'd be-
okay. And do you
That's an
want a
interesting
second
one.
one, or do you think you want to start with one?
Oh, let's go.
Because I would be coming off of that then, which I'm fine with. I'm fine to come off of that and have you replace me. So that leaves, I'm happy, Sean, that you're willing, or interested in the capital committee, 'cause I was thinking to myself, that would be a good one for you, if you were interested in it, so I'm glad to hear you're interested in that. You know, I think for the master plan committee itself, you know, obviously I've been on the MPIC I was on the MPIC for a long time and felt as if it's time for some new folks. But on the other hand, too, I've had some people reach out to me and say that, you know, they wanted to talk to me about the report. And so,
So we're not yet doing the master, we'll hopefully be able to do that on the 28th.
oh, okay.
Because we need to distribute who all the applicants are for that.
Got We need one person from us?
So one person from us, and then two other people from the pool of applicants that we can pick from. So, and I had talked to Liz. Liz was going to, our Liz was gonna talk to Liz Dillon just to check in with her to see where she was. I think she wanted to interview some people, maybe find out, I don't know who she's selecting. Then we'll see what candidates are left and available. So just tonight, I think just the housing production plan is the other one that we would want to talk about. And I agree with Liz that I think it is good to have two planning board members. Because I think that's what the select board was also wanting to do, to have two of their own, two members, and then the Affordable Housing Trust. So I guess, so if Cheryl's interested, sorry.
Oh, I apologize if I may, Meredith.
Yeah.
It's pretty expedited. So you folks have already seen the scope and you've already have a lot of familiarity. So I just think it's much more efficient.
Right, for the housing production plan.
Oh, good. We like efficiency. Yeah, if it's two members, and I'd be happy to be one of them, and it sounds like you'd be happy to be one as well. So, yeah, okay,
Okay.
great.
And CPC, and then Maggie, you would stay on your two.
Yeah, I would stay on mine if you know, that's good. If you know, I'd really be on anything. So I'm fine where I am now. I know Hal expressed interest in the budget coordination committee. You know, if I drop that, then I would, you know, interested in the housing production plan committee. But as Liz said, that's a shorter commitment, I think. Isn't that the housing production committee is just trying to get the plan in place, and that is pretty much in place because it's replicating pretty much what's already been done.
It's working with the same consultant, but Liz, do you wanna speak to this? It's really updating a lot of what's
So
happened.
I guess the charge as it's laid out is to facilitate the creation of the town's housing production planning coordination with the town's consultant, and to monitor the implementation of the housing production plan upon completion and approval by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I guess the monitoring the implementation part is something that, you know, will be discussed during the development of the plan. I mean, there's typically an implementation component to a plan. So it could be something that does extend beyond the timeframe that's in the consultant's contract, which, and the reason why I'm saying expedited is she initially said 6 months. We're already almost 2 months into that. So we had a conversation last week and I said, is that still realistic? And she said, yes, but we really need to get moving. So the intent is to have this thing wrapped up by mid-fall.
So the last plan had a number of recommendations that the planning board was assigned as a lead party on. And so if that happens again in this plan, there should be follow-up steps that the planning board will need to take. So having discussion about those and how we want to go about those.
Yeah.
I think after the consultant is done and the plan's adopted. Last time around, the select board and the planning board both adopted the plan. And
And it was a very robust plan. I mean, it was very good.
yeah, there's
And we've done a lot. I mean, I think our consultant was like, wow, you guys have been busy.
yeah, there's,
Lot of
I'm sure
development
there's
going on.
you know, some things that were kind of put upon us, like ADU was on that target list for a couple of generations of housing production plans, but the state went ahead and
The other thing I'd like to advocate for is a reduction in committees. I mean, I've said this multiple times, you know, these past few years. The town has like 90 committees, and we always seem to be adding committees without ever getting rid of committees. And as I've said before, sometimes I do feel like these appointed committees can kind of be a workaround to the elected committees. So I would like to see, and maybe it's not for discussion tonight, but there really should be sunsetting of these committees. So we fulfill our charge, we do it, and then it's over, and then it comes down to town staff sort of to monitor things. I just think 90 committees is a lot for the town, especially when we have a strong town administrator.
Will the open space sunset when
That will
it's?
sunset, that will be, yeah. It has to be, and then, you know, for a certain period of time, it'll be good, but it's similar to the housing production plan where you have to, in order to get state grants, you have to, you know, just
So,
update it.
yeah.
And so we're like in that updating stage. But it will, so that will, once this finishes, that will sunset.
And then the climate action planning committee would sunset as well? So we're down to 88, Maggie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the plan should be created, and then I don't know what the next steps are. I don't know if it's going to be like MPIC and then you have to follow it all. I'm not really sure. We haven't gotten to the plan yet, so we haven't even considered next steps yet.
I guess
So-
it depends if there's really a simple follow-up entity, like if there's a staff person that's their responsibility. The master plan itself had so many different responsible parties that I think that's why the implementation committee was recommended back when. But, you know, like this, on a climate action plan, you know, maybe that falls under the town administrator or the DPW or the planning department or something. Just like the traffic mitigation committee did excellent work and issued a report, and one of their high-level suggestions was to make sure that there was a responsible party, and they suggested the town administrator be the responsible party. And so, you know, in that scenario, that was an advisory to the select board, so the select board could decide that that was a priority that they wanted the town administrator to take on. So I think it kind of depends on the charge of the committee, who formed the committee, what they want to do with the work of that committee. One of the things I think about the committee, think about even that one, Maggie, is you get some expertise from folks in town who don't necessarily want to run for office, but offer their expertise on a committee level, which same happened on that traffic mitigation committee. There were some really qualified people. So I think we do benefit from those committees who offer residents an opportunity to share their expertise.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's really great members on it. So I'm not trying to take away or diminish their credentials or the value that they add. It just is, I don't know, sometimes I feel like, especially when a committee gets to be 15 people or 11 people, we can kind of get in our own way sometimes. And as I said, there's turnover because you're only appointed for 1 year, and you don't get a lot done in 1 year when you really meet just once a month. And then sometimes you can't meet because you don't have a quorum.
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful if you have a large committee to have subcommittees, so that the subcommittees can meet and report back to the larger You know, the planning board, early on in my tenure, had some subcommittees where two people would work on a zoning article together and then bring it back to the whole board. And I was looking back for something and I was like, wow, we had 6 zoning articles we were discussing at the same time. People were working on them, bringing them back, and we decided which ones might move forward to town meeting. So, I mean, that's another thing, if we don't have as much committee work that we're doing and we want to tackle some zoning work then, you know, we don't have a huge planning department staff-wise, so, you know, it doesn't have to be writing the zoning itself, but to set out what would be the goals and then get help with the technical language.
Yeah.
But in any case.
And we have posted for an administrative assistant in the planning department, so a part-time, 20 hours a week. If anyone is interested, Nick has posted that, and Liz would love to have somebody come in and help her and help with the minutes. It's really, would take a tremendous amount of work off of them. I support all of the committee assignments that we've discussed and people's interests.
So should I make a motion for the board to appoint Hal to the Community Preservation Committee, Maggie to the Climate Action Planning Committee and the Budget Coordination Committee, Sean to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, Meredith to the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee, myself and Sean to the Housing Production Plan Advisory Committee.
I would second. Okay. Any discussion?
And then we'll discuss the master plan committee once we get the other information.
Yes, and then so hopefully what would be nice to have that for our next, on the 28th. So Liz is gonna follow up with
Great.
Liz Dillon on that, so, and then we can get those distributed for the applicants. So with that, we'll do a roll call. Maggie,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes?
and myself, yes. Great. Thank you for that. And then the next item, and it was interesting when I was looking at the fall minutes, we had discussed some of our goal setting and where we were and, you know, if we could get the sign, you know, bylaw approved, what would be our, you know, the next things that we had been looking at. And I thought it was great because Cheryl put a list together of some things we haven't even talked about. So we can look at some of the things we have, like, you know, and that I think realistically, and now hearing what Liz said, what do we really think we could have an article pulled together for our next town meeting in the fall? And typically, we try to do zoning in the fall because you don't have so much budget stuff in the spring, so fall is the better time. Looking at this, I mean, I think Liz, do you have a sense, or maybe we could get a sense from Carolyn, from KP Law, if she thinks it might be doable to get the first phase of the recodification? We did vote for the first 3 phases of the first level of recodification.
If she thinks, like the first level, in my recollection from the audit that was done previously, is really just a cleanup and organizational improvements, and it's not really content substantive. And if we could get that to fall town meeting, I think that would be great. I also just want to.
I'm not, can I just interject here?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the approach. I think the approach is sort of like an initial audit, which is more to do with talking to people like the chair of the Board of Appeals, the building commissioner, some of the local land use attorneys, like almost kind of like trying to get a better handle on like what's not working.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no way I see that.
Yeah, right. So it could be that the result of that audit does bring forward maybe some of like that low hanging fruit, right? But bear in mind, it does need to be advertised by like I mean, Nick was basically telling me today, he wants, ideally, something's getting advertised in like July.
July 9th.
So that's 8 weeks. So, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that, and I'm almost thinking that if you guys have a single topic that Carolyn could kind of pull off the shelf, right?
Like we talked about, the cut and fill has been something, how
Like
that,
cut and fill could be something where if you guys are looking for a similar approach, like with the sign by law, where no baloney, like here's the process, here's the definitions, this is what you have to do, these are the plans that are required, like whatever. I know nothing about your cut and fill. I heard today from Nick that it's like a paragraph. I don't know if that's true or not.
That's not true. I just want to come back quickly. We can talk about cut and fill. I was looking at my notes from 5 years ago on it. But if the intent is to talk to those other folks, I don't see that happening by the fall. And I just want to say, I think we should also plan for not just the fall and the spring, but a year from the fall, from next fall, because it's going to take at least that amount of time to work on larger things that I think we should work on. And I just, some of what I put on this list is based on, when you're running for reelection, you're talking to a lot of people, or a lot more people than you are on average. And so there's definitely things people are interested in having the board think about. And so some of it's planning, and some of it's longer term. It won't be something that's, even if it does lead to zoning, it won't be immediate, right? It's going to take time. So I think we need to think about short-term, medium-term, long-term. What are we going to work on? And it will fall across different time periods of our tenures, But I think we need to start thinking that way, because otherwise we're just going to keep getting the low-hanging fruit stuff. We don't end up getting sort of the larger things. And we have an opportunity now, since we're past the ADUs and past the MBTA communities for the most part, that we can tackle a few things. And cut and fill is one of them, but there's a few others.
you said, on there was, Airbnbs, and we had talked about that, and, what I heard from Nick, and maybe I'm wrong, and Liz, if you were part of this, conversation more deeply, is the building department said, well, they're not allowed. We don't allow it, but
But they're
Yeah,
here
but
anyway.
it's the same issue that you had with the sign by law. So it's like it's silent.
it's silent, exactly.
It's
And it
silent.
says
It doesn't expressly prohibit. So there have been instances where, you can have up to 3 unrelated persons in the same home, right, as boarders. Like that's just
no less than
allowed.
30 days, and there's a 30-day minimum for rental.
I don't know, yeah.
That's in the
but-
building,
but I-
that's what the building department was saying, well, they're not allowed because you're not allowed to rent a property for less than 30 days.
Right, but you can rent a room in your house, you can rent a room in your house to a boarder for up to 3 unrelated people can be in a single family home. You can have 2 boarders. That's just the law. So
Up a lot.
it's,
So I think we should have it. So I'm advocating that we should, and I'm not sure why the building department
Yeah.
was
So
questioning it, but
it did.
I think that might be a good one.
Do you mind if can we run through the
Sure,
list?
yeah,
And then
let's-
we can,
Let's go top to bottom.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
think it's, and I can explain why I put them
Sure.
on the list, and, some of them, like,
Yeah.
you've already identified that you're interested in, but, so the codification we were just talking about, so I do think it would be helpful to understand from Carolyn what kind of time frame she thinks we're thinking about.
Yeah.
It seems to me at the earliest would be the spring, and it could even be over a year, right? Depending upon how many
Right.
changes this is.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say here, maybe spring of 27. Question mark, okay? I just like it would be helpful if that's something we know.
Right.
The The next one I had review the Milton Village mixed use overlay with landowners and perhaps with the economic feasibility consultant. Because we adopted it in 2020 and we haven't had any applications come in. And I'd just like to understand if there's anything in the zoning that's an obstacle, to having an application come in, and if there's not, then it's just because people haven't seen it as an opportunity they want to take advantage of. But, when we spent so much time thinking that there was opportunity there for mixed use and to kind of revitalize.
So I would put that lower on a priority. First of all, it was COVID in 2020, so nothing really happened, not a lot was happening anyway. But what we've seen is, we've seen the acquisition of property. So we've seen a developer come in and acquire now 5 different separate buildings in that. And then, so we now have the Bank of America, which started, that ended up being the first project because of what the developer has to go through with the DEP and more complications with the state on the Muscle and Flow building. He had also, the Ferrucci building has been acquired, and I'll just finish.
Sorry.
And the other thing that we have also just finished is the MBTA zoning. So we've done 2 layers of zoning, and the MBTA zoning, the ink just dried on that. We still have to come back to town meeting and sort of update our affordable units. But I feel like of all the things we could do, that was an extensive, how many years did that even take to
So one thing I'm going to mention.
do that with the Milton Village District? I think it just seems like there's things that we would like to get to, and we're seeing things happen. It might not be as fast as people think, like, why isn't anything happening down there? There's also a possible proposal for extra space storage is possibly considering coming back with some sort of project down there. So I feel like things are happening down there, and
So one thing I'd say is some of those properties have changed hands and one landowner owns quite a few of them.
Right.
And I think it would be interesting because he's talked about the mixed use as the use is what he wants to do with the buildings.
Right.
But we already know that one of them, he can't meet the parking requirements and maybe the other either. So is it, what's going to happen then? Can he come in under that, or is he going to have to go to the Board of Appeals first because he can't meet the parking? I just think we should be ahead of it instead of waiting until an application comes in. So, maybe it's just a conversation that Liz can have with the property owners as he's, contemplating, what he's going to do with those properties. The other thing is the majority of the Milton Village is not in the MBTA communities. Remember, it's just the extra space storage, the web mill, and 88 Wharf, and the rest of it's not.
Milton Hill House?
Milton
all the
Hill, that is, but that's not in this just overlay. Milton Hill House is not in the
I thought you meant
overlay.
in the MBTA,
Yeah.
Can I suggest maybe an adjustment to the approach to this list? Can we walk through it and just define what's on this list that absolutely should be accomplished in this year? The things that are maybe low-hanging fruit or musts, really, really important. Can we just do that? And then go back and look at the
Right.
balance and discuss how we can accomplish the balance and maybe
I
what.
think that's a good idea.
Would that be all right? Because there's a lot here, and some of these are probably not complicated, and we should just acknowledge it's gonna be part of our work for this year. And we'll at least put them in a bucket of, we're definitely gonna get that done.
All right, so
Could I just ask just a question of how the board operates before we move on? Does the board ever have, so Cheryl, you wrote, have a reviewing with landowners. Does the board ever pull in business owners or landowners and have discussions about how they're seeing in the real world the zoning that we're writing and implementing, how that is actually affecting them? Like, do we ever have like a workshop or a working session with them, or is that something that's not?
We haven't done it on the sign review. Liz attended a Chamber of Commerce meeting. So I think Liz is trying, opening dialogue with the Chamber of Commerce to hear certain things we've heard from them on. We had, we actually this particular developer came before the planning board with a pre-application, sort of a conceptual plan, which was really helpful because he wanted to know before he went down, and made the, started really moving forward, that it was something that we would embrace and.
Sure.
and,
I think in the time that in my 4 years, I guess, it probably happens most often as part of a process where an applicant's before us.
Right,
We don't
right.
really have like an open forum
Yeah.
and invite some of the active people in town to come in and
Yeah.
tell us what challenges them. We don't really do that. I don't remember doing that at all.
When we did the
Be
Milton
naive, but-
Village overlay, the MPIC, started that process, and we made an effort to meet with every property owner in the district, 'cause it's not a big district. And so, and that's how I found out that JD bought Milton, and he had just become the owner when we were doing that. But the East Milton, there has more owners, and I don't think, certainly they were reached out to as a group, but not necessarily individually.
Yeah.
And I think when we're working, one of the things I think, on my list is the non-conforming businesses. I think those property owners we should speak to, like what do they see as being challenging? Like even Mr. Mignosa from the fruit center, what was challenging about getting, their, because I think that should inform, our priorities too. What's an obstacle to business owners?
I agree with you, and in a meeting not too long ago, I guess I'll call it recent, we were talking about an economic feasibility study, and my point of view was the existing business owners can tell us what works and what doesn't work, what restricts them and what could help them, grow, and learning that would help us better understand how to create more opportunity, in town, so I think how we can construct that, I'm not sure, but I think there would be a lot of valuable information that the planning board could gain from that, so. But it hasn't
Yeah.
happened, it's not like we haven't really had a forum and said, where we wanna hear from business owners, please come in and join us.
Probably since the master plan was done, there was an outreach to all different groups, healthcare, all sorts, but not since then, I think.
How many years is that?
It's been a while.
And really in that time, some of the business owners are the same, but some of the business
Oh,
owners
sure,
are new.
some change, yeah.
Some are new.
If you think about it, the healthcare environment has changed a lot with the hospital, which,
Let's,
let me just give
yeah, let's
you
go
my,
through the, yeah,
do you mind if Meredith, if I just tell you what the thoughts were, we can, as
Sure.
Sean suggests, we can come back and talk about the merits or the
I
priorities.
think that's great.
So the MBTA affordability, because I know that we had submitted for the 15%, like right now our zoning has a caveat, it's not, it says, it's 10% if HLC doesn't approve 15, so I just feel like we should clean it up. But if we have time,
I
if
agree.
HLC has gotten back to us that that's acceptable.
I agree.
So that's simple, I think. And then the condo conversion has come up because, again, properties to convert, we have a provision in our bylaw that allows a conversion of a large home of, I think, on 10 acres or more. And if we think about like the Burr Estate is one that I think is maybe what that was written for. But we've had some 40Bs that have been historic homes that are large, but aren't 10 acres. And so there's other properties for sale that are beautiful historic homes that are not 10 acres also. And so this was looked at a few years ago. And so there is work on it. I have in my records that was beginning to look at again. At a minimum, I think we could think about the acreage, the 10 acres. And, that's just a flat out thing. What if it were in a residence A, a residence B, a residence C? The acreage could be different, the size of the home. Because remember, we had, Meredith, I think you'll recall, the Historical Commission came in with I have somewhere in here, a list of how many properties there are, like 2 acres even. And there's a lot and homes that are large and historic, like this was this list that they had provided us. And 2-acre lots with residents, 6 to 7,000 and more was like 31 houses. And 1 to 2-acre lots, there's 20 that are in the 6 to 7,000 square foot range. You know, so there are buyers certainly for large homes, but you know, would it make sense to think about that? Because it could help meet some of the housing affordability challenges without having to have even new construction, right? Because it could just be within an existing home. So that's what that is. Then the short-term rentals is something that's come up because people are experiencing them in their neighborhoods. Years ago, there was also a bed and breakfast. One of the things about both of those is, you know, there could be some, by regulating them, that things are happening already. Once you regulate them, then you can enforce them. And you can have a registry requirement that they have to be licensed, I think it is, and they pay a fee. And so, as I said, we can come back to the merits of each of these. The Brook Road overlay, when that was first drafted, those buildings have been vacant now for a very long time. There was an overlay that allowed for multifamily there, but it required a larger lot than what's available there. And so I just feel like there's a lot of people who don't like the derelict vacant properties there. And it just feels like we should understand if there's something we can do, you know, in the zoning to help facilitate that.
And there
becoming-
is a potential, Liz, I don't know if you've heard anything back, but there was sort of a somebody who wanted to meet, a developer who wanted to do townhomes there under MBTA zoning. But I don't know, they were way off on their numbers, like they were way over on how many units they could put on the site. And so they were gonna go back and run their numbers and take a look. But I don't know if there's been a follow-up, but there may be something happening there under
Okay.
MBTA.
Was that the one next to the food mart?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I haven't heard anything. I mean, I think it just, the numbers just didn't work.
Is that
The
the
numbers
kind of,
just didn't work.
we'll come back to it, sorry, I'm making a note.
So,
yep, so.
I
continue,
mentioned
yeah.
address pre-existing non-conforming businesses, we're all pretty familiar with that, we can come back. Site plan review for town-owned projects is something we've talked about, you know, whether it's a fire station, a school, library parking, or what have you. So we can begin. Cut and fill, I was reading, again, through my notes, and I had some notes with a couple of discussions with Joe Prondak. So I'd like to go back and look at that. I also, there's a model bylaw from Cape Cod that addresses the topic. And I think one of the reasons that we're all interested in it is some of the things that come before us for site plan review, especially, have had so much topographic change and retaining walls that if we can get something in our bylaws to have it be more sensitive to the site. So I'm still interested in that and have done some legwork in the past on it. And then the underlying business district zoning requirements such as parking, right? Because we talked about that a little bit with the fire station in East
Right.
Milton. So that's why I put that on here.
Okay, that's
And if there's, and again, maybe this is where talking to the businesses too, like I can't do this because of the zoning. So I think we could learn from that. Planning. So this is like longer term, right? So sort of a community process.
Can I just hop in for the zoning thing before we move on?
Sure.
Could we look at like an FAR zoning? Because Cheryl, you said many times in the past that, you know, if you look at the Pine Gardens development, like the houses are so big, you know, on Pleasant Street compared to the surrounding neighborhood that perhaps if we had a FAR limit or bylaw, then those houses would be more in scale. So could we ever look at an FAR bylaw? Because I've been thinking about this for quite a number of years, that if you look at our ZBA, if you ever follow our ZBA hearings, it's run of the mill to, for them to approve a variance. And all of a sudden, our little starter homes, say on Gulliver Road or Elm Street, they were our starter homes. And now all of a sudden they go to the ZBA and they get a variance, and the 3-bedroom, 1.5 baths are now 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. And our starter homes are also the same as our downsizing homes. So we have kind of done ourselves in by allowing and giving these variances for these houses to become larger on these smaller lots. And now we've done away with our starter homes, we've done away with our downsizing homes, and now all of our more affordable housing are now not available because the square footage of the house has increased so much. So I think perhaps looking at our FARs could be important. Open space around each house is really important. We spent a lot of time on that on MBTA zoning, and I just think that having outdoor space available for homeowners and children to play is just great for mental health issues. So I think we should look at FARs.
Okay, and one of the other, that would be like a change in the dimensional standards, so it's not like a new zoning, it's just a change to the dimensional standards within the districts we have.
Yeah.
Remember when we were talking about ADU and how we said we should look at our accessory structure setbacks and heights? So that, I didn't put that on here, but when you're talking about FAR, it made me think of that. We should look at that too, because the ADU bylaw allows for the ADU to pick and choose between accessory structure and main structure. And sometimes in some of the districts, the accessory structure is very close, allows pretty close to the property line, but then you can also do the 2.5-story, 35 feet.
Right.
So you could be putting a pretty, tall, a tall structure is not that big, I guess. It depends. I mean, if you did a 450 square foot footprint and it got to 900 on 2 floors, and then you did a pitched roof, and you could do it, pretty close to the property, and if everybody
Right
did
on.
that. So I'm not saying we need to change, I just think we thought that it's something we should look at. So I'm gonna just put the
Dimensional standards.
dimensional standards for accessory structures. Just so,
With the FAR, yeah.
and with FAR and open space, so it's,
That did come up a lot
yeah,
during our MBTA and
yeah.
ADU.
Can we go backwards, Cheryl?
Yeah.
I just want to go back to, I want to understand, what is it, and maybe I didn't listen, excuse me, maybe I didn't listen well. Add short-term rentals. What is it that
We
you-
don't have a bylaw that addresses short-term rentals at all,
that provides it or prevents it?
either one.
It regulates it.
Doesn't regulate it, it's silent on it, in a sense. Like Liz said, you can have unrelated people living in your home, and they can be what's called boarders, right, Liz? I think that's the language. So that means a boarder can be paying.
And it would
But-
be interested to see what other towns have been doing with this, and that's where I think Carol Murray and KP Law, she'll know of some really good Airbnb,
Yeah, I did locate a
Which-
couple of things too.
most people don't want to allow them, the short term, less than 30 days. Yeah, but it's not regulated, we're
Yeah, they
silent,
don't allow them, but towns know that they're happening.
but they're happening,
Right, so,
exactly.
yeah.
Lexington has one. And I started reading one in Great Barrington that looked interesting. The Cape, of course, has them because they have a lot of rentals.
Yeah, short term.
But
But
isn't-
that's what it is.
Isn't the zoning itself, language that defines that it's not, if we have single-family zoning, that in itself would suggest that, an Airbnb is not a,
Level use.
is not a legal
Yeah.
use,
Well, maybe you can comment on that
I
part.
think, well, and I think too, because you have, you've got pre-existing non-conforming, multifamilies and apartments and, if you don't have a way of regulating how those
Yeah.
get rented, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's the border. I mean, you can have two people in your home.
Yeah.
And you can rent them bedrooms and they use the same bathroom and they use the same kitchen and that's just it's allowed.
Mhm.
So that those are the two probably most problematic instances. Somebody would probably fall back on the argument that they're a border, and or they have a pre-existing non-conforming multi, and they're maxing out how much income they can get for it.
So some people have found that there are Airbnbs, in their neighborhoods. And there's no regulation really around it. So like you can put a regulation in that says that it can't be used for events, for example. Like Airbnb, I think as a company says that, but there's things in the couple that I've looked at. But, I think it was raised with me during the campaign season that there were people who are interested in seeing us look into this. And, I think if we did a process, maybe they would come to the board and tell us their experiences and what they're, what they're interested in.
It came up several times in East Milton,
Yeah.
in my area,
Yeah.
just at the doors.
And
I
it
was
came
surprised.
up in precinct
Yeah.
2.
Yeah,
Because I think there were
So-
buses dropping, there was one residence where busloads of people were being dropped off.
yeah, and this woman said that she contacted the town several times, and, the town basically says that we can't do anything about it, like, there's no regulation on it.
So that's where this is coming from. It's coming from people who
Absolutely.
are experiencing some things in
I
their
think that should
neighborhoods.
be, moved, and it seems like we should be able to have something that's pretty boilerplate that Carolyn
Yeah.
could work from.
So from your experience during the campaign, you're hearing people that see this as problematic and are looking
Right.
for a regulation to prevent it.
To regulate it at
Regulate it.
least, to regulate, not necessarily prevent. What people said was, I'd like regulation. So if we can call someone, if they're not following the regulation, then they can be enforced.
Yeah, well, when I take a step back from, and just think about where we're at as a town, and the pace that we're changing, it's like overwhelming. I'm not opposed to having this on an agenda for the year, but, we're watching multi-unit residential go up faster than probably anybody ever imagined. And we have yet to absorb what that impact will be on the community. We have the ADU, which now we're receiving applications and, we don't know the impact of that on the community. We have the Ambulatory Communities Act, which we have yet to see the impact of that on the community. And I just feel for the town, we just need to be as, cautious with what we do, because where the pace is really overwhelming, and I think most people in town have no idea of what it's gonna be like and how quickly it's gonna get there. So, I'm not, regulation, sure, but I'm not I won't be a proponent when that discussion comes up of, making this a regulation that makes it, possible to add Airbnb and, short-term rentals.
No, that's not what I heard on the doors. I heard
Yeah.
more, the town setting boundaries and expectations for these things that we already know are happening. To
Already
be
know
able to,
they're
be able to earn a fee on them to be able to have someone that lives next door to be able to go to the town and point to saying, you know, this is the rules and the regulations of the town and how to, you know, they're not abiding by them.
Yeah,
Or something that prohibits them.
Or that
Yeah.
prohibits
Or
them,
prohibits
sure.
them.
It's,
Yeah, and I think,
for all the folks
public.
that bought, and this is gonna sound like I'm repeating what I've said in previous years. If you moved into Milton because you wanted to live in a, single family, residential neighborhood, I feel we owe those people as much protection as we possibly can. And having an Airbnb next to you is not.
Well, that's why they've raised it as a problem, so,
yeah.
you know,
yeah.
Again,
It's-
I'm probably already, presenting my point of view on it. I feel it's important to protect the people that, desire not to have that. Yeah, so anyhow,
Yeah.
that's my concern. Generally, we have no idea if you could try to forecast what it's gonna be like when the East Milton project's done and 440 Granite Ave is done and Randolph Ave is done and, both sides of Randolph Ave are done. We're not that far away. These guys are moving. The pace that they're on is really, really fast. A year from now, a lot of these projects are gonna be complete. And,
it's interesting, I went on a.
Liz, oh, sorry, Liz, can I just ask a clarifying question? When I know that our bylaw is about you can't have more than 3 unrelated people as boarders. So my interpretation, if you have a boarder, that means you as a person, you're living in the house and you're having boarders. So you are present in the house with 2 other people, renting a room. An Airbnb doesn't mean that the property owner is in the house at the same time.
You can
And
regulate that, I think,
They
Maggie,
can,
yeah.
they could be there. They could be there.
Can.
Yeah, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean they are there.
But no,
But
but
I
I
was
think,
I think early on, I mean, I had colleagues that were doing this, 15 years ago, right? Because they had a 2-bedroom apartment over in South Boston. So I think early on, that was probably a much more standard model. But I think the economics are that investors, have discovered that they can, if they're allowed to do it, there's a lot of money to be made. But there's also the other side of it too, which is that there's regular folks that want to try to figure out ways to stay in their homes. So there's more than one side to the story.
I'm pretty sure that you can regulate it such that there, it requires the homeowner to be living there and not renting it out and not being a corporate owner. So I think it's worth exploring, because
I agree.
it could be that it is helpful to someone who's looking to be able to stay in their home, as you say, Liz. And, it could be helpful for someone who's doing a renovation of a place and they need to be out for, a short period or just something. And they are happening. So that's the issue. They are happening. So I think it's,
And
whether we
we're
have
looking at
something for
too.
the fall or not, I don't know. But I do think that is something where we should start a public process and get some examples from other communities. And if Carolyn has some, great. I've got a couple that I started to look at.
Great, that's good. All right, to move to planning?
Yeah, so we've heard a lot about west part of Milton, not having a lot of planning effort. And there were the 2 visioning processes that happened that it would be nice to have some follow-up, on those visioning sessions. So there has been interest in amenities and in community gathering places that came out of that visioning, but we can look at those.
When was the visioning?
MAPC did the visioning. One was for 7 Brush Hill Road. I understand that DCR is now not moving forward with that program, which is, I don't know if that's a reversible decision or not, but it would be worth finding out. And then the other was Pagoda Circle.
Mm.
You know, but they're both, and then, you know, now there's some CPC funded projects like Peverly Park and the path around the pond, and hopefully
Right.
some kind of commercial business that's, you know, retail type facing will go into the ice house. But I just think that, I don't have anything in, you know, particular for a next step with it, but I just think a planning process there. The map boundaries of the business districts is just another thing to help think about what to make it easier for businesses so that if they don't have to always go to a special permit process, if they could be incorporated instead of residential district into the business district. So that's kind of, again, kind of a planning effort. There's been a lot of talk because of the override and budget problems of whether we can get more commercial tax revenue. And so I do think is something that the planning board should discuss. And whether that tax revenue comes just purely from business or some mixed use or something else. I do think that there was definitely a lot of talk about that.
I thought it was good, I just, as a note, that, because I think, first of all, we all know, like, office space is not in demand right now. There's an abundance, and there's, you know, for rent signs all over Milton, you know, lease, in commercial businesses. Retail, you know, I think having amenities, you know, sort of to what you're, we've unfortunately seen every time we've had new retail space open up, we end up with a nail salon. So I think finding, you know, what are the amenities that we would like, you know, how do we implement them? But I think the idea, which is important, and I know Sean you've said this a number of times, and it was good to hear Jay Fundling in his study analyze the, you know, the retail, the commercial property benefits. And then he said, it's never gonna be a silver bullet for our budgeting purposes. So I think that people feel like it is somehow a silver bullet, that it's gonna bring all of this cash flow in. I think we will, you know, and we've talked about 88 Wharf is one of our, you know, highest revenue producing. So I think residential, we're gonna see some really positive impact from residential projects.
I had somebody say to me,
Commercial, it's, yeah.
on the, knocking on the door, a indoor sports facility, because they have to take their kids to far off places because there's just not enough places. So I think we, you know, maybe need to think beyond like some of the traditional things that people think of with the commercial use, maybe. I don't know what, we need the economics, you know, study, obviously, I think, to help us with that. But I do think we owe it to residents and taxpayers who've asked about it to take a look at it
Yeah.
and see what it shows.
Yeah.
So,
But as we know, and we've talked about it at the budget committee, and Sean brought it up, $3 million is generated by our commercial tax base. We bring in $4 million in personal property tax. And of that $4 million, 96% of that $4 million is attributed to our poles and our wires and our infrastructure. So, you know, I don't want to mislead people about what commercial is going to bring to the town. Sean has stated it way more eloquently than I ever could in previous meetings. We've discussed it at the budget committee meeting. It's really, we would need 14 fruit centers, which would have $40 million worth of property value, and it would only generate $2 million in property tax. So I think we're covering this by doing this economic development initiative. But I just want residents to know that the only additional income that businesses bring in is restaurants contribute a meals tax, and that's it. Businesses do not contribute part of their profit to the town of Milton. I feel like I've heard that a couple times. Businesses do not contribute a percentage of their profits to the town. The only thing the town gets is the property tax and then the revenue from the meals tax. So, you know, I hear all the time, we need more commercial, we need more commercial. I'm a huge advocate of small independent businesses, and I think it would make our everyday life better. But I don't think it's gonna solve our budget issues. So I just want to make that clear.
And just to add my 2 cents, I know that you guys have discussed this a lot, and I don't want to rehash everything, but I agree with Maggie in that maybe it's not a silver bullet, but the amount of people that talk to us about wanting to grab a cup of coffee after they drop their kids off at Tucker or having some sort of community space over there is really something that struck me. And I understand that we're not going to build 14 fruit centers, but maybe we could build
Yeah.
1 or 2 more coffee shops. Not just to improve people's
Yeah.
quality of life.
Well, you know how it is when you see something you posted, well, maybe you don't if you don't look into Facebook very often, but how many times people say, oh, a Trader Joe's, a Trader Joe's, a Trader Joe's. But, you know, there's a lot of dollars that Milton residents spend in other communities, in adjacent communities. So if we can somehow keep some of that, and, you know, I'm talking about local businesses too. I'm not talking about like national kinds and big box kinds of things, because
think
it's
it's
about,
good
people want a community, they need a place for social interaction. Teens need it, seniors need it, families need it, and we don't have a lot of it. And so if there's a way to get more, that gives us a little bit more commercial tax revenue. But really, it's about the amenities, I think, that come with it.
I agree.
So on the next one, the two-family zoning, you know, there's a lot of people who just or have concerns about the affordability challenges. And we have like almost 600 two-family units, but we don't allow them anymore. You know, after zoning was passed, I think in the 20s and 30s, they're not allowed anymore. So is that we know that MBTA communities didn't consider two families multifamily, which is, I thought, a big mistake. But we don't know how things are going to come in with the MBTA communities, how much it's going to be, to Sean's point. But I
And
thought
also
we
the-
should just look at where we have the two families. Does it make sense to think about allowing some more of them? I'm not saying like everywhere, but is it a way to help get some additional housing that's at a different price point, more of a middle income price point? Sorry, you wanted to?
No, I just said, one of the other things is looking at what's coming in right now is Michael White is being overwhelmed with ADU applications right now. And there is a, coming up to speed process on this. But he could almost have another full-time building department staff person doing
I was
just.
wondering why he would, in the budget, he had raising the hours of the inspectors instead of having a plan reviewer. I mean, if he's doing all the plan review, he needs someone to do
both.
plan review.
Well, he needs both, and I think they're down 2 people right now, in the planning, in the building department, planning also, in the building department. And, if we don't wanna see a lot of turnover with our department, people running these departments, we can't overburden them, and we have to be conscious. And I think maybe, because I see what your point, we do have a lot of the 2 families, but maybe we need to just see how the ADUs are coming in. I'm sure there's like a big rush to put them in because it just passed, and they'll probably likely taper off after a little while. But I feel like with the ADUs, we might wanna not rush to start, doing 2-family, and with MBTA until, to your point, until we sort of see the impacts of.
What Michael's experiencing is consistent with what I said earlier. The pace is, we've probably gone from, 25 miles an hour to 60 miles per hour. And he'll never be able to keep up with it. I mean, that's on top of the work that he has just in terms of, projects that are under construction, whether it's residential, renovations, additions, new construction. He's completely overmatched, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't know how the procurement works in terms of if it's only annual for being able to add staffing, but, you know, department's bringing in revenue, it's going to be bringing in additional tax revenue. Those applications pay for the people who are doing the reviews and the inspections. It's really shouldn't, take too much to get it adequately staffed. That's in my opinion.
My point earlier isn't about a math equation. It's not about making sure we're taking in enough revenue and permitting to offset the cost in the building department. My point earlier is about what pace should a town move in terms of its involvement? Do you know what I mean? So I'm never gonna say, hey, as long as we're bringing enough in permitting, we can hire 2 more people to staff Michael's department, we should just keep on going. That's not what I'm saying. That's actually exactly opposite to what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's changing so fast, and before we, have even recognized the change that we've made in the last 2 or 3 years and absorbed it, where, we gotta be careful, because we'll continue a pace of change in the town that we'll never be able to keep up with, ever. So,
Well, a lot of the pace is due to people doing additions to their homes, and you can't tell one property owner that they can't do their
Right.
addition because you don't have staff in the department.
it's not what I'm talking about. I'm
I
talking
know, but I
about,
mean, that's,
I'm not
part
talking
of
about
it.
that at all. I'm talking about, creating more and more and more opportunities to drive more and more housing. You know what I mean? It's just, we just have to be careful. And I don't think, my point of view is not just a point of view, I also have plenty of people that I listen to, that I talk to, that I hear from. I didn't have the opportunity to be running for election and listening to people that are, considering the candidates, but we're all in the community. And there are a lot of people that, express their points of view too. So it's, there might be some that are proponents for just having the gas pedal down on housing. There's a lot of people that aren't.
that's why I have it under planning
Yeah.
here and not
Yeah.
under zoning. I'm not proposing anything for the
Right.
short term. I said
Just
at the
thinking about
beginning
it.
of this, short term, medium term, long term.
Yep.
Anything that's under planning is long term.
Yeah, no, I
right?
get it, but there's a series of things here that are, if the outcome, imagine what some of the outcomes might be. It is just more residential units, I mean, if we get into a conversation about large homes, and I don't disagree with you, Cheryl, there are some large homes that there probably aren't, many buyers for, what did you say, 6,000-7,000 square foot homes, do you know what I mean? And I'm just, what I'm recognizing is the list is pretty substantial in terms of the impact to create more housing. I'm just saying that we have to be careful. We just can't keep going, given what we've already done. MBT housing, ADU, and the multi-unit residentials.
So putting that aside, just if you can, how do we, as a planning board, advocate for the building department to have proper staffing? Is there something that we can do? And not to facilitate,
Yeah.
not to
Yeah.
facilitate more, but
Right.
to help him out so that he and the other people in the department can do their job as it is right now? Is there something that we as the five and Liz and Vonnie can advocate for that, or is that not something that we can
I
necessarily
think
do?
maybe, communicating it with the select board, and
I
the
think-
town administrator. We have a strong town administrator who's, and it's the same in the planning department, being careful because, we're looking at the things that we do, but then the planning staff is overseeing all these permits that have already been issued and approved, all the, the 840B projects, but then there's the memory care, which people, things that are in the pipeline currently, which Liz is having to make sure that everything that we approved in site plan review and in our permitting, that the Goddard School,
So
Gardens.
my concern is if you just look at the sign bylaw request of Michael White. He requested a simple amendment to give himself additional time to review. And I was a little frustrated that his boss, the strong town administrator, did not take a more vocal support of his request. As an employer, if I have an employee come to me and say, I need this tool to do my job better, then I would go and I would do everything possible to give my employees the proper tools, because I want if they do their job better, then the customers are happier and everything's more efficient. So I was a little frustrated with that. We have an employee who said what he needed. He specifically said what he needed, and unfortunately, the warrant committee didn't heed his concern. So I do think it falls on Nick Milano to advocate for his employees. You know, if you look back through our budget cycle, at the end of last year, we had $4.5 million certified free cash. And, you know, um, a significant amount of that money didn't go to the town departments. Like at town hall, it went to the school side. And I was a little frustrated with that because we heard from the police and fire of their needs. So I agree, Hal, that we should be helping our building department and our planning department because that's who we interact with. But it's really hard for us to do that because we're not really their bosses.
But I will say the work on recodification will greatly also help the building
Absolutely.
department.
I was gonna say, there's so much time in understanding our zoning bylaw. You know, Joe Prondak, the commissioner that was here for, 12 or 14 years, when he went to another community, he said, oh my God, what a difference. My job is so much easier. That's why I've been, every year we've had an opportunity to ask for the funds for this, I've suggested it because it will save staff time and therefore town money to get it done. And, you know, when you're thinking about like even the 40B developers who have high-paid attorneys, full consultant teams, they still had mistakes in their list of violations because of our zoning bylaws. And so getting that fixed is going to make a difference.
Good.
And there's also, well, something on my list moving down further is state legislation, but now we have a lot of pre-existing non-conforming that ends up going to the zoning board of appeal. And if these items that are in the budget bill that's being discussed now, it'll make some of that unnecessary if you're not making your non-conformity worse. Like right now, if you have a house that's non-conforming, anything you do gets scrutinized because it's already existing non-conforming. Anyway, there's just things like that would make it easier for the building department. So can I just finish
Yeah.
lastly on these things?
Yeah.
The 40R zoning is just something that had been talked about at one time because it allows you some funding from the state. I'm just going to leave it at that. And then rules and regs, we had talked about scenic roads,
did.
right? And
That is a good
we
one.
haven't had an application come in on that more recently, but we've had some frustrations with that in the past.
Yeah.
And that's something that's just within the planning board, right? We don't, or is that actually
It's
have to
a
go?
historical.
Does it have to go to the town meeting?
No, it's just,
That's what I thought.
it's planning board, but we usually go on it's also the historical commission weighs in on it, and then it sort of, the planning board sort of listens to the recommendation of the historical commission traditionally, and then they come back and then they make their decision. But it's very, it's one of those that's very vague in what we can defend of, when somebody comes in, an applicant. Certain things are very clear as far as, a driveway, how many feet of stone wall can you take down by right? But when it gets into trees and other things,
Is this meant to
we don't really have.
designate more roads as scenic roads, or the rules and regulations within designated a scenic road?
My feeling was the rules within it,
Okay.
not adding to it,
Gotcha.
but
I would agree. Yeah.
we've just
Clarifying
had
what's already there.
Yes,
Gotcha.
it's
had some
very,
issues come up
it's a very
where
general,
Mhm.
sort of.
things have happened, people didn't know that they needed to come for a permit for a scenic road, which basically if there's trees that are in the public way and stone walls, that you're going to change those, then it needs a permit.
And like fines if they do remove things, I don't think there's, it's always sort of negotiated, like on Hillside Street, there was a developer who came in and just, it was actually being sold, it wasn't even the developer, it was, I think, they just clear cut, like on one day, this whole lot was all trees and the town-owned trees. And, you know, it ended up being a mitigation of having to come back and replant native plantings and, it
But then
was,
then there's a question of,
There's no-
well, who's responsible to, let's say, water the trees to make sure they survive, and what if they don't survive? And there's just some questions that have come up,
right,
right?
that I think we could make it,
We can make it better.
yeah, because I think we adopted the boilerplate from the state and then never put in rules and regs, so.
It would be there again, good to see what other communities have
That's
done.
same, that's, I agree.
And then I just put pending state legislation and ballot questions, just something for us to be aware of and to think. Site plan review is one, that's moving its way through the legislature. And I haven't compared what it says to what ours is, but at some point we should, especially if it passes. And see if we're gonna need
Now,
to.
aren't they trying to do away with site plan review?
No, they're trying to just make it be consistent, because there's no, it's not like the zoning bylaw or the zoning enabling whatever the law, the overriding law is that allows zoning. There's no such overriding law that allows site plan review. So each town can write their own, except for MBTA.
Yeah, and that's sort of been my problem with this administration. They're trying to take away local control. And this is one of the ways they're doing it, unfortunately. So I'm not a fan of
I
what
think-
they're doing.
Maggie, they're trying to make it more consistent. From what I read, it's pretty consistent with what we have. Like, I don't think we'll have to change ours much, but I do think it'll, maybe Carolyn at KP Law can take a
Yeah.
look at it if looks like it might pass. And then I mentioned there are a couple of items, housing-related items or zoning-related items in the budget bill. It has mostly to do with the ZBA, but I can share those. I think, Liz, you have those too. You could share out with folks just to be aware of them. And then there's a ballot question that's called legalized starter homes, which would make the minimum lot size 5,000 square feet. We have a lot of homes on 5,000 square feet in our residency districts already, but that's not the minimum lot size anymore. It's 7,500 for us. So we'll have to follow that. So that's.
Yeah,
it.
I sent Wells and Driscoll, some of the zoning, because it's like MBTA on steroids. It's
Which
like-
one?
I don't remember, there was two, but they, and they weren't even aware of them, because they were still in subcommittee. So I don't know how they've advanced, but it was like five units, on a small parcel would allow up to 5 units or something. It was definitely a multifamily housing.
I don't know the language, but you could be describing what Cheryl had written as legalized starter homes. That I think that is valid. It's a valid question to have a statewide zoning that lot size can be 5,000 square feet. Which,
It's,
just imagine how that would change so many communities in Massachusetts. I'm not familiar with the language, but I'm.
the ballot, yeah, it's actually pretty, I looked it up because I was,
that.
it's, the petition is this. That's it, that's how long it is. So it says no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, unreasonably restrict, or require special permit or other discretionary zoning approval for the use of land or structures for a single-family residence in a zoning district that allows residential uses, provided that the single-family residence is fully contained within a lot measuring equal to or greater than 5,000 square feet in area and with equal to or greater than 50 feet of frontage. What they said they're trying to do is basically allow starter homes again, you know, and the land, the cost of the land is the thing that's driving the cost of starter homes to be too expensive. That's the ballot question.
I
That's,
think what they say and what their intention is very different. You know,
well, so if you just Google, you know,
Yeah.
legalizing starter homes ballot question, you can find this. I did it today, I just found it. But,
what's the frontage in our, I'm not sure what your frontage is, but you know,
150, you know, in a 1 acre, single A, it's 150-foot frontage.
I think in a C, it's probably 75. Because if you're talking
Yeah,
about a,
75.
yeah,
So you're saying like in my neighborhood, Cheryl, yours, Sean, yours, like I have an acre. So all of a sudden, I could, as of right, subdivide my property and build more housing?
3 homes.
I don't know if that's what it's saying.
Well, I don't hear anything about frontage, just the lot size, right?
It says 5,000, no, it does say 50 feet of frontage,
50 feet of
50
frontage.
feet of frontage.
which has
Then-
access
then if
to
you had-
public.
Then if you had 100 feet of frontage, then you'd have 2 lots.
But it also, it has to have access to public sewer, so is Hillside public sewer or septic?
Yeah, not the whole thing.
There are,
Like plenty of other neighborhoods who people have spent a considerable amount of money on homes, especially recently, and they, you know, bought into, you know, the idea of a single family neighborhood, and now all of a sudden that could totally change overnight.
My lot frontage is 50 feet, so.
That's why,
Yeah.
as I said, there's a lot of,
Mine is 60.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of homes in Milton that are
East
non-conforming.
Milton, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And not just East
Yeah.
Milton,
Yeah.
a lot of precinct one
But
and
it's
10 and
consistent,
2.
but it's in a
and-
whole area that's
It is,
consistent,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, these are, I just mentioned those as things for us to be aware of, not necessarily for us to do anything about, because it may
Thank you
require us
for
to do something later.
that. That's,
you know,
that's great.
as I guess as I think through what we could do that's most beneficial to the town, anything that makes other departments' jobs easier should be the highest priority we have. You know, anything like codification, absolutely, like you talked about, Michael White's job gets improved now. We're as far as we can go there, now it's up to KP Law to see how quickly, you know, Carolyn can get through that, but I think if there are opportunities for us to improve, you know, the improve, you know, any department's ability to execute their work, that should be a priority for us. I'm not sure if we're gonna find that, but, you know, when we think about, you know, some of the problems that we run into, because maybe it's cut and fill isn't well enough to find, you know what I mean? And maybe for, whether it's a developer or somebody in town, but anything like that, I think should be high on our list, just to you know, help anybody that we can possibly help.
And we'd also talked about,
Wait, before we go, just I wanted to follow up on Cheryl's legislation. Cheryl, do you know who's sponsoring that? Is it all like developers are sponsoring that bill?
The ballot question, I don't really.
Or the ballot initiative? Yeah, who's
I don't
sponsoring that?
know. I think it's they're like a number of different entities, but I'm not sure who it is. Meg, I didn't dig.
It doesn't,
that far.
it doesn't say.
I mean, there are people
So
who have
that would be-
signed it,
That
but
would be concerning, yeah. And it'd be concerning to see if those same people have contributed to Mara Healy's One Commonwealth Fund, you know.
well, I'm not. I'm not
Yeah,
aware of who it is. So
Could I,
Yeah.
so, sorry, you went,
no, go ahead.
so Sean, to your point, and again, apologize if I'm not advocating for this, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah.
The recodification is gonna take a year, perhaps. But we all agree that if we were to get that, once we get that done, it's gonna improve the situation here in town for the town itself, for the staff, for the people that wanna live here and work here and open businesses. Is it a money issue that it can't be done faster? I'm not saying we have magical money that we can just create, but if we were to be able to provide more money towards that from the board, from the town, would it go faster? I mean, I would think it, yes, but not necessarily.
I don't think at this point the funds have been allocated. Now it's in KP Law's hands to
Okay.
just execute as
Well, I
fast
think
as she can.
the question is, depending upon how much input they want to get from attorneys and, there's been a handful of attorneys who have done the bulk of the work in my tenure on the board. And so they have a lot of experience with the issues that they've come across. If it's just those couple of people, I really think it would be helpful if, Liz, you can ask Carolyn to give us a realistic time frame at our next meeting.
I think, yeah, and I think too, and this kind of came up when we were discussing the scope that they provided. I think it's probably in the folder. Have you had a chance to look at the scope, Al, that they provided for their work?
I brought a
Um,
I have two
her,
copies.
her strong recommendation was that a repeal and replace process is very, very difficult. It's a really high bar. So that would be basically like take the existing
Yeah.
zoning and drop it
Throw it
down and take this whole new thing and sort of just repeal and replace, right? So her sense from her experience is that it's better to chunk it over like 3 town meetings. So that was why I was kind of in my head thinking maybe there's a way we could somehow get some of this sort of like initial piece done in the fall. But I really, with all the other stuff that's on the plate, like the housing production plan, the economic development plan, the open space and recreation plan, the climate action plan, which if that funding comes through, is going to be getting kicked off pretty soon. Well, it will be getting kicked off in the next couple of months, essentially. That Cheryl's probably much more realistic that it would probably be more like the spring 27, even for that first of the 3 town meetings. So that was just some of the feedback we were getting from Carolyn based on her experience with this stuff.
So one of my experiences, Liz, is that we did just a renumbering of the zoning bylaw when we did the first round of codification. And that generated discussion at town meeting. I really feel like the next generation of town meeting should just be like that, cleaning the whole thing up and not like a lot of changes, because I feel as if that's going to be a lot for one vote. So, cleanup can be explained as not changing the way or what people can do. Maybe it's changing the way a little bit, but not what people can do and where. And then you can get to the things that the attorneys want to see done differently, or that the commissioner wants to see done differently after you've got the thing cleaned up.
Yeah, I honestly, can you guys be quiet? I honestly,
We can,
I
Liz.
honestly
We will be
don't
quiet.
I honestly don't know how much sort of like internal inconsistency there is in the document.
So just for
So-
example, there's no dimensional table. So you read one place, I gotta search and jump around to find what my minimum lot size is, what my setbacks are, and someplace it might contradict it, somewhere down the road here. And the other thing that would take some cleanup would be the definition of height is different in different sections. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that is like craziness in zoning. There's no like place that where parking is like a table. I mean, if you were used to working with zoning codes like I am, you see this zoning code and you think, like, how is it that this exists? Because it's just not user-friendly. That's just the first level, is making it user-friendly. So like, there was an unofficial one-pager that put the setbacks on it, just for the building department to use at one time. So they wouldn't have to go through 10 pages each time just to find out what the setbacks and the coverage and the heights were. So,
I would think that if you put the narrative language from our zoning bylaw into AI and say, please convert this to a table or a chart, it could easily do that, couldn't it?
I'd say it'd take a lot of review
Yeah.
to see if that's,
Yeah, it would
if it's
take-
accurate.
It would take a, it
You
would
know-
take a lot of review, and the height that's in section A pertains to very specific circumstances and very specific people that have very specific property rights. And the height that's in section whatever, same thing. And then the height that is in section whatever. So that's where, you know, I hate cliches, but the devil's in the details. And that's where it gets hard, because then it becomes a substantive discussion. It doesn't become a clerical, a Scribner's. It's not, that's not what it is. It's no, in this section of the bylaw, we're not pointing back to a, you know, to a definition that, you know, applies to the bylaw in its totality. We're talking about heights in this particular, you know, overlay district, and that's it. So then the people in the overlay district are like, wait a second, we thought we could go higher. And you know, do you want to make the rest of the town higher? So that's where that stuff gets really hard, and then it becomes substantive, fortunately, because it's,
So you should
that's
have,
how the town wrote their bylaw. They wrote their bylaw like circumstance by circumstance.
so normally you'd find a use table. And in the use table, you would find which districts you're allowed to do what. So if single family, and you'd have an X in each of the districts listed there. And then you'd have another use, and it would check which districts. Now you go in there and you look, I'm allowed this here, but maybe somewhere else in there it tells me I'm allowed it. There's an overlay that covers it somewhere else. I mean, we didn't, until recently, we didn't even have, we still don't have all the overlays in the zoning map. I mean, if you're a property owner, I've had several people reach out to me and say, you know, can I do this with my property, or where do I find out if I can do this with my property? And you realize that it's not like the easiest thing to answer. Say, okay, well, there's this GIS map, and then you go to the GIS map, and then you click on it, and you're not, well, anyway, it will make a big time saver if people can find the information themselves. You know,
So-
it's kind of, you know, searchable format, which now it's searchable, but it's still difficult.
So I have a suggestion on this, Liz, and to our board. Could we ask Carolyn to return back to meet with us, just to have a discussion about how to expedite codification, and to give Hal a chance to, you know, ask whatever questions he has of Carolyn? You both are architects. You guys spend time in code. I'm a builder. You design it per code, I get to build it per design. So I don't have to spend the time in code evaluating the way you guys do. So you know how problematic it is to work with ours. I don't have the pain every single day that you guys do. But I think in the interest of expediting whatever it is we can expedite, whether it's chunking it out, as Carolyn has said, or whatever other process we discuss with Carolyn, I think it'd be great for her to come back in now that we have allocated funds, and just talk through one more time what our process is, what our timeline is, and let's make sure we all agree with the direction that she's gonna go.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. I'll definitely have Carolyn come in.
Or we could give Cheryl another 30 minutes to criticize it as it is, because I'm sure you're not done.
Right. Stop.
So the things that, this was a great list to go through. It's,
Yeah, thank
10
you.
after 9, and,
Yeah.
you know, I'd like to sort of narrow it down to things that we think we want to do, like short term, because I think a lot of these are good also to be looking at for long term. The other things that I'll just add, we had talked about, the town has not done a preservation plan in years. I think it would be nice to be able to have a consultant, you know, to work on that, and maybe jointly with the historical commission. You know, it's a lot of the information we already have, a lot of the properties that have been surveyed. But there's, without any effort on preservation, whether it's open space, whether it's historic buildings, it's always fallen at the bottom of the list for the town to not really, and we live in a, you know, an incredibly wonderful town, and you know, we talk about the physical character of the town, and you know, part of that is what the preservation plan does, incorporating, cultural landscape reports, architectural, historic homes. It's an inventory of what we have. And then so what are we gonna, are there any actions that we're taking to do that? So that's something I would like to see. I know other people have mentioned that to me, and it's been years since we've done one.
Does it, having one make grants available to us, or is it
You know what?
serve as a guide for the historical commission, or just
That's
like
what I
what
have to
it,
look at,
what
I
does it
we
do
should-
actually? Yeah.
Liz, would you know the answer to that? I have examples that I brought in.
I would say that the CPC is probably where I would go first for something like this. The housing production plan informs their work under affordable housing. The open space and recreation plan informs their work. This recreation master plan informs their work. So my suggestion is that historic preservation is one of the pillars, one of the three pillars. So that's a possibility. Maybe if there's some other town funding to get matched or something. Mass Historic does have sort of very limited funding for historic structure inventory reports that I've worked with in the past, but there's not a lot of money out there for historic preservation. The main pot these days is CPC.
But Liz, once it's adopted, is there some financial opportunity once it's adopted? I'm just wondering what do we do with it once we have it? Is it used by the historical commission in making their decisions? Is it something which allows us to apply for municipal, there's grants available to, I think, municipalities through the Mass Historic Commission. Do you have to have one of these plans? I don't really know, so I'm asking, that's what I'm asking.
I think it's the same answer, Cheryl. I don't think there's a lot of money out there for historic
Okay.
preservation. I think you have to get really creative. There's definitely there's tax credits. There are National Register listings, state register listings. There's there are certain things that can get teed up based on doing some of this work, doing some of this like foundational work. It really depends on the town's priorities.
And it may be helpful to inform CPC, when the CPC
Makes decisions.
makes decisions, what are the priorities? What are the things that have been at risk? It was the CPC's funding the yacht club, which was, our old jail, and restoration work is being finally happening on that very slowly, but it's happening. They're getting ready to do the windows, the CPC, they've done the roof. So that's something to sort of guide and say, okay, these would be a priority. We had put on fire station, previously it was, the historical commission had said, we want, these fire stations, and we could use CPC funding to do them, and that's, Atherton Street would be the next one. So it would be that type of municipal projects or assets that the town has, that I think it might guide that.
Mass Historical will provide matching funds for a plan.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. So maybe that could be something that the planning board applies to CPC for, for a grant for a consultant to maybe work on this.
I just.
Not looking to put more work for our board.
I think it's just a thought I have in terms of what would our residents expect of us. Not every resident, but probably some residents, and for any folks that are listening tonight and they hear some of the things that we're talking about, envisioning, I guess aspirationally the list, but I'm sure there are plenty of residents that might be thinking, what's the impact of the change that's ongoing right now before we make more changes? Do we even recognize what is the impact of where this being built? And I think we have a responsibility to understand that, and be able to respond to a resident, that yes, we do understand what the impact is, and and we have capacity as a town to absorb more. Do you know what I mean? I think in we had a calculation that Liz gave to us recently of what's under construction, Liz, on the projects. I'm not asking you, but I know you gave it to us recently. There's a tremendous amount under construction. Eventually, those are gonna be occupied units. You know, I think, did you say that Michael White has 20 ADU applications? Maybe it wasn't you,
roughly.
maybe Liz said that.
I think,
But, you know, we have this surge, you know, and I feel we're responsible to the residents to understand, you know, what's the impact of the change that's ongoing before we, you know, create even more impact within the town. So, I don't know how we do
Smart.
that, you know, but I'm sure there's a lot of thought involved in that, but,
traffic analysis.
you know, the impact is probably to every service we have in town. You know, we were talking about this back when the MBTA communities discussion took place and you know, but I'm considering, you know, the impact of all the multi-unit and most of the 40Bs and large 40Bs. I'm not sure there's ever been an analysis by the town of what the impact is of those. There isn't one that I'm aware of. But, you know,
Yeah,
before,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Maggie, but before we face the criticism of residents in town that are hearing us talk about creating more opportunity for more residential, I would want to be able to be prepared as a board to say, yeah, well, we've been informed of what the changes are that have taken place and we understand them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But,
And
Sorry,
that's
Maggie.
actually, that's gonna be one of the discussions that I wanted to bring up with our final agenda item in talking about the $450,000 grant. And part of that,
Before we go to that quickly.
and I'm not jumping to it, but I just was gonna tie this in, is
I'm
that,
just talking about impacts before we get too far.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, and I asked, and after town meeting, I did send Nick Milano an email, wondering if we can assess impact fees. So if you read in the paper recently, you know, the town of Braintree, they're proposing a 700 unit project, and in return, the town of Braintree had a developer agreement, and to assess and to mitigate some of the impacts on on the town. And as part of that agreement, the developer committed to paying substantial mitigation funding and public benefits, which included funding for public safety, a new patrol vehicle, more than $329,000 in support of the police department over time, traffic monitoring technology and cameras, contribution for schools and public amenities, including recreational access, parking, and riverfront improvements. So, like, and I think I reached out to Liz about this too. Like, how do we as a town get these developers to pay impact fees? You know, and then at town meeting the other night, we heard Chief King talk about the drain on Milton Hospital, the drain on his staff at the policemen, because he has to send them up to the hospital for a lot of issues up there, and it's draining our resources. So how do we get these developers to pay impact fees? And who would negotiate these developer agreements at the start of any type of project?
you know, Liz, I don't know if you want to comment on that in your experience. And I don't know how they, as a town, how they negotiated that themselves. But it would
Yeah,
be
I
interesting.
I would probably need to, I know Maggie, when you reached out about that, I had said that my former colleague in Braintree probably wrote the zoning for that. I know she wrote the zoning for the project that's going by the old Armstrong Dam. That's the 700 one. That's an MBTA project. The permit behind the South Shore Plaza, which I think is like 400 or so units, that was a different type of zoning. But she was definitely involved in both. And she's also the chair, or up until recently was the chair of the zoning board in Watertown. So I'd have to look at it. I'd have to see whether or not that those sort of impact fees are written into the zoning itself. I don't know the answer to that. I do know from a legal standpoint that there has to be a nexus between the project and the fee. So it can't just be sort of, some random item. It has to, I mean, if the developer doesn't mind and they do it sort of like of their own volition, then it probably could go through. But if it's challenged, it has to be a nexus. So I don't know. I mean, the town has adopted inclusionary zoning for pretty much all of its multifamily development and overlays, right? So there's decisions that are made about sort of like, what do you want developers to provide, right? So there's that as well, like you have to be able to justify what you're asking them to do. So I don't know. It's something I could definitely take a harder look at.
Or maybe as
Yeah, I
future
mean,
projects come
that's to
up.
reflect the town's priorities.
And those are probably not 40Bs that you're referencing in Braintree, which I would
It's under
think has
MBTA.
No, neither are 40Bs, correct.
we have less control
Yes,
over.
neither of those projects are 40Bs, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yes.
really don't have you have no ability to impose additional fees. In fact, that letter that you saw that we put together for 648 Canton, shows you the extent to which, an applicant can come in and sort of get through that permitting process and sort of defer, a significant amount of process. Right. So, yeah, I don't know. Definitely
So
something to look at. Maybe.
One thing I will say is that scale of development, if the infrastructure can't support it, the town is not obligated to put in the infrastructure improvements for it. So part of it might be that the developer is required to pay for it because they wouldn't be able to do the project otherwise. And, call it the impact fee, but it's really just a cost of doing their project. It's a cost of business. I know Boston does impact fees and other things as part of their large project review. It's baked into their whole system. And it's all based on the scale of the project and the location and the impacts in that particular location. And, it's very neighborhood specific. So that kind of is consistent with what you're saying, Liz, in terms of the having to be very much tied to the impact that the project has. It just can't be something broad.
Yeah, and I think what,
Police and medical are part of our infrastructure, and I feel like that gets overlooked.
Yeah, I don't think that the law allows that to be something you can.
Physical.
Yeah, it's
right,
like, it's like roads, it's like water, it's like sewer.
there's really, there's a gap, Maggie, as you see it, and probably as a lot of people see it. And if anything was evident in town meeting, it was Chief King and Chief Grant, how stretched they are trying to meet standard service requirements for the town. And, I mean, it was really difficult as a town meeting member to sit and listen, to what really appeared to me to be, they're doing everything they can with really limited resources. And back to the point I was making earlier, they have yet to assume the responsibility of all this new development. Their job just gets harder. Now, all of a sudden, you open up all these new buildings and this is, it's not common for Milton to have 90-unit residential projects. We have yet, to challenge our fire department or our police department with that kind of a demand. They don't have enough resources, it feels to me, the way they would like to for Milton as it is right now. And they have yet to experience Milton as what it's gonna be like in a year. And when I think about, creating a greater burden on police and fire or on DPW, I feel we have a responsibility to understand the impact of what's happening in Milton right now before we create more of a burden, on the town.
I'm sure we could get stats on how often they're called to Fuller Village, or how often they're called to Unquity House, or Winter Valley, because those are all over 90 units.
And
they're all
Atherton,
elderly.
Atherton gets more calls, there's second.
And the elderly get more medical calls, because obviously
Yeah.
you know, potential health issues. They've got, I'm sure they have the stats on that, so we would know, or we'd be able to ask, you know, on those. And those are the things I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And there might be something else which is at that level. I'd like to suggest that we say for the fall, that we could do the simple thing of the MBTA community 15% requirement. Does that make sense to everyone? Yep. All right. And I'd like to start a conversation on the short-term rentals. Not saying where, you know, it might fall, but I think the conversation should start. And I'd also like to start a conversation or what would be involved with planning for the west part of Milton. And I
More long-term.
recognize it's a long-term
Yeah.
kind of thing, but I'd
Which
like
might
to
actually
pick-
come out of the housing production.
or the
I
economic
mean,
development.
economic
Yeah,
development plan.
but I just think if we state it and we start to think about it, we don't have to start it immediately because there's other things that are gonna, economic
That's- I
development
can see
plan's
that
underway
being-
and the housing production plan's getting going. But I do think it would be beneficial for us to make a commitment to it, about what we would want to do, what it might entail, and scenic roads. So those are my, everybody else can throw in theirs, but I mean, that's my suggestions for a focus start.
So I would like to address non-conforming businesses. I feel like that would be somewhat easy to do because all the non-conforming businesses have been around for decades and decades. And so we just have to make them not be by special permit. And also I would like to do the FAR with dimensional standards and open space.
So are you suggesting a zoning change in the fall for the pre-existing non-conforming, Maggie, or for the spring maybe?
Well, it's, you know, as soon as it's ready. I don't want to kick the can too far down the road. I mean, I think I think addressing our pre-existing businesses should take priority over new businesses in town. And looking, even though I do support looking at opportunities in the west part of Milton, and I've already, you know, come up with 3 different locations where I think it would work. I think we owe our existing businesses the respect to codify their business before we take on new businesses.
So Cheryl, you referenced earlier state legislation that could be pending about pre-existing non-conforming. Would that,
Pretty sure it's residential.
it's residential,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure it's
Okay.
not business. And I support addressing pre-existing non-conforming businesses. I just don't know that we could do it justice in 8 weeks we have before, for the fall. And it's partly because I think if all it is to say, you're gonna change the map so that it's a business, it's an allowed business use, or, you know what I mean? I think we have to kind of hammer out what the changes would be to address it, and I think we need to talk to some attorneys who have represented the businesses as well as the business owners themselves to kind of decide what we need to do,
Right.
what we should do.
But I think we can start working on it, Maggie,
so,
to your
yeah.
point. I think we could, you know, start looking at what maybe other communities have also done with that.
And as far as the FAR and dimensional standards, I agree with that. I think it's possible that could be for the fall.
When we say for the fall, are we saying prior to fall town meeting, or are we saying in the season of the fall?
I'm talking about for
For
fall town meeting.
Which means a July
Yeah.
9th.
So that means
8 weeks,
8 weeks. How many,
which is for us, 4
how many
meetings.
meetings? That's what I was just thinking, yeah.
So the FAR,
I'm a little concerned that we don't have enough time to do all that.
that would be the only one really for the fall, because the the MBTA one is a pretty straightforward, just you strike some language that you don't need anymore once HLC accepts the 15%. That's just a cleanup. But I think on the FAR, we could target it, and if we don't feel like we can, and the dimensional standards, if we don't feel like it's ready, we just don't do it. But at least we can give
Tee it up.
Nick an idea of what we think we can do. And I know they don't love a lot of zoning in the spring. So that's why I think it's helpful to map out a bigger or longer term picture. And I think we'll find out next meeting from Carolyn what we might get from the codification, and if we think that's doable for the fall. That's mostly her and for us, it's review.
Yeah.
I don't think FAR, I've looked at FAR, for various zoning, like MBTA, for example, in particular. What I think we would want to do with that is kind of codify what is kind of our standard, what you find most places. And just make sure you don't make it too strict that, so that takes a little analysis, in terms of what we've got. So try and pick each
But I
of
think that would be
the
good.
residential districts and say, do some analysis in each one. And maybe Hal and I can split it up and do some of that analysis. Take what looks like a housing pattern in a residence C, a residence B, A, double A. And
Because we did do a lot of that with MBTA.
exactly, that's how we ended up with the
We
FAR.
probably had a lot of, that,
Well, I did a lot of it in the
Yeah.
Elliott Street corridor and the Blue Hills Parkway. I didn't do it in the, residences that weren't, or the part of the MBTA zoning, but, obviously the lot coverage is another one that plays into,
Right.
big. And so like right now, you see all this stuff about lot coverage in our zoning, and then it says except for single-family residential. So that's how you get those houses on Pine Grove, whatever that street is off of Pleasant, which look like, it's a too much house on the size of the lot it is. So it's a combination of the FAR and the setbacks and the lot coverage.
I think that's worth starting to look at too.
And can't we even just put a placeholder in? I know like every other board puts placeholders in, even when their zoning isn't, or their warrant articles aren't ready. Couldn't we just put a placeholder in and then if it's not ready, we just pull it?
And I think Carolyn will also,
You can definitely do that, Maggie. But even in my short time here, the level of consultation that was required on something that's something like an FAR. I mean, like Cheryl said, the MBTA thing is clerical, but the FAR, if it starts to impact, people's abilities to do certain things, this just has to be a lot of consultation. So it's just being realistic about how fully baked something needs to be pretty early on to have a good chance of passing.
Yeah, because that's what I hear from people, when a new house goes up and they're like, oh my God, how did that go up? It's so out of place. It just doesn't fit in. So, and adding on to houses and tearing down houses and putting new ones up, that's happening all the time. So I think that's why it's a priority, because all these houses aren't just fitting into the neighborhoods that the neighborhoods were designed for.
One thing you have to be careful about is taking away too much of their rights. I think a lot of reasons people are adding on is a starter home they're turning it into their next home because they have nowhere to go for the next home.
And the
No,
mortgage
and
rates are low.
that perpetuates the problem. That's what I was saying before. Like, we are exasperating a problem because we are taking a starter home and making it, a bigger home, and then there's no starter homes on the market. You know, I've lived in 5 different houses, you know, and I went from smaller, went from an apartment on Blue Hill Parkway, you know, to a smaller house, to a bigger house, and now I'm downsized now that I'm, you know, almost an empty nester. So, like, and I wouldn't be able to do that if all of a sudden the houses, like, are all on as I said, on Gulliver and Elm and on Mathos Street. If you drive down Mathos Street, those houses are huge and they're built all the way to the property lines and they're going for like $2 million. And that neighborhood was a starter neighborhood. So we're taking our starter homes off of the market. And so we're kind of, you know, we're sabotaging ourselves.
Sounds like you're gonna sign the legalized starter homes petition after this, Maggie.
In certain neighborhoods.
Well, I do think some of this will be coming part of the discussion, or it should be the housing production plan.
Yeah.
My thought was not to adjust the FAR so people couldn't do additions. It was really more to kind of think about how to just not have the most egregious, Maggie. So maybe we're in a little different place on how far to go with that. But I think the first thing is to understand what our built environment looks like. So what the FAR is. That's what I did for MBTA communities. That's how we set those FARs. And then look at, you know, what kind of incremental adjustments might be made there.
And if we get the housing production plan, the economic development plan done, and this list, you know, that we've started with.
Those plans should feed into what we do next. I mean, we should, from those, we should have some marching orders. But
Like, looking at
yeah.
the west, on the west
Yeah.
side. So,
And all these are great ideas, but I will not ignore what I said earlier, that we need an analysis of the impact of the development that's ongoing and that's permitting. I mean,
absolutely.
these are
No,
all
it's-
great initiatives,
They have to
but
all.
we can't, I've said this repeatedly for years now. Change really should be done in balance. If we don't do it in balance, we're gonna create problems that we
Right.
can't solve. And we certainly don't have the funds, you know, to respond to our departments the way that would like to need, the way that we would like to be able to. It's just, it's not fair to the departments to create more burden, you know, again,
So
I
Sean,
keep saying it.
we talked about a clerical fix on the MBTA communities. We talked about FAR lot coverage and dimensional standards. And we talked about initiating discussions for planning in West Milton. I don't see any of that adding any burden to anyone.
No, I'm not arguing with any of that,
Okay.
you know, but I just,
And scenic roads,
I'm
yeah.
reiterating what I had said earlier. I'm not trying to stop any of those things. We should do all of those. We should do them quickly. We should do them fast and get them done. I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. You know, I think it's really important for the town and I think it's something we owe to the residents.
I just want to be clear for anybody who's watching that we're actually not suggesting doing anything that's going to expand things at the moment. We're talking about addressing some fixes, which is the FAR and the dimensional standards and the
Recodification.
and the recodification and the pre-existing non-conforming businesses, I also think is something we've heard a lot of problems about over a long period of time, my entire tenure on the board. Initiating a conversation about short-term rentals is coming from residents. And I think and so is the planning for West Milton. So
Sure.
I
and-
feel as if we should start those conversations.
Sure, and for the folks that were listening earlier that heard amend condominium conversion section of the zoning, when we were talking about, you were articulating how many homes is 6,000 or 7,000 square feet. I think people that were listening then said, that sounds like more housing. So, again, what you
Not at
said.
this time.
Yeah, I just think we have to be able to recognize what it is we're asking our departments to digest before we suggest, you know, plans to create more burden for them.
One of the things about the condo conversion is as an alternative to 40B. Now, some people say, well, we're getting close to our SHI requirements. But we know that 2 of the largest 40Bs in Milton are historic homes, either being torn down or altered significantly because they couldn't, there was no alternative for them to do a condo conversion because their lot sizes were smaller than 10,000
I
square.
don't think they would have done a condo
10
conversion though.
acres.
I don't think those developers were looking to do a condo conversion.
Are you
Maybe
re-
somebody
are you-
else would have bought it though, who would have.
Are you referring to the Can
No.
Nav properties?
To the
582 Blue Hill Lab.
582 Blue
and-
Hill Lab especially, because it's 11,000 square foot house. On, what, 5 acres?
Yeah.
So it's just, also, there's no
Somebody can
protection.
apply under the ZBA, they can go to the ZBA and apply if you have a large property and you want to subdivide into condos. There was an application a few years back that came in, somebody wanted to take a large home, divide it into 3 condos, but the abutting neighbors said, were really upset about it and didn't want it, and so the ZBA denied it.
Well, let's just go back to when it was written. It was the
Would've been-
Burr Estate, and so the
Yeah.
Burr Estate was
That was,
turned into condos, multiple buildings on a parcel, and a large historic home converted into condos. And we have more than one of those, I think, that was, it's been utilized well, and it allows an opportunity to
I don't know, it
preserve.
works on that.
So
size, yeah.
I do think it's worth talking to the Historical Commission, and, because they came to speak to the planning board before. And saw it as an opportunity to help preserve large homes, but
So, yeah, no, so I respect, I mean, all this list, and I hear what you're saying, Sean. So just so you know, the chair of the select board reached out and was interested in wanting to know if the planning board would like to attend one of their meetings in June, which are on the Tuesdays typically before our meetings. I think this was a really good, robust discussion that we put our goals, and I just wanted to discuss with the planning board if we would like to go and discuss this. I think the select board was thinking, are there things that we could align on that we would like to work on together? They've, certainly expressed interest in the housing production plan, the economic development plan. And there will be, they will have representation on the
so you're thinking June
housing
9th?
production plan. So,
Or-
yeah,
I would ask that if you would allow me to get back from my,
oh, yeah,
So the June, that would be the
The
June.
later one on-
24th
yes, so they actually meet on the 23rd, I think.
or 23rd, okay.
You said you were gone for the 11th and the 25th meeting, so are you back? Will you be back for
It's
that?
the 28th and 11th, I think.
28th and 11th.
28th, sorry, write that down.
All right, so June 23rd for
The
the,
23rd, and basically just to recap this, what we're working on, I think it would be an opportunity for us to talk about the fact that we've already initiated that we've engaged with MAPC and we have a certain scope of work that we had talked about expanding a little bit and,
do we know where that stands?
Liz, do we know where funding to continue the economic development plan is?
I'd have to go back and look at what was in the budget, but I believe there was either a $25,000 or a $30,000 allocation, and it was gonna be split between the 2 boards, so
Oh.
that each board sort of had an equal
Yeah, so
share. and-
because I was
Right.
looking at the minutes, there was a request for us to accept $25,000 in free cash to go towards the economic
Yeah.
development plan, which we accepted, right?
Yeah, we did.
I just would like an update on, like, what's the scope? Do we have an opportunity to have them come in and discuss the scope with us? Should we discuss the scope jointly with the select board on the 23rd? Should MAPC be there for that discussion? I just feel like everything just takes so long to kind of like get ironed out, and
Mhm.
it is something that I think if all the parties are together and we can hammer it out, we
That would
can
be a
at
good
least
time
get
to
them
discuss
going.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
I agree.
MAPC should be at that first initial meeting. I would think that we would have to meet, and didn't we get $25,000, and did they get $25,000? So it's a $50,000 contract, which was less than where the full scope was gonna be covered. I thought that's how we left it. We weren't sure how much of the scope would be covered by
Right.
the funds
Right.
that we had.
Yeah, and whether or not you folks want to use some of your FY27 planning study money to enhance some of the scope. potentially, I don't know. But I don't believe anything has been settled beyond the last, round of conversations, which was that, each of the boards was going to have a share in the funding, and the scope was to be finalized. And so maybe the 23rd is the
Time we can
perfect night
finalize.
to have that conversation, I think everyone has.
So we wouldn't finalize our scope and they finalize their scope and then we come together because we have two different pots of funding.
We've sent
Um,
them what the original scope was. So it
Right.
would be nice to, because I think Cheryl had said, let's stay with that framework of what that scope was, what MAPC was working from. And, and then tweak from that.
I mean, I remember Maggie at the time, we talked about, gee, maybe it'd be nice if they could take on the analysis of the pre-existing non-conforming
Pre-existing,
areas
yes, and
And-
West Milton, yeah.
and West Milton, and possibly even what's going on in Milton Village, or East Milton Square. We have vacancies in those storefronts, or we have vacant buildings, that, though, we thought might have to be sort of around too. But it would be useful to understand how much it would cost for round two. There's a lot of lost, I think it's lost cost when you have something that languishes for a year and you have to kind of get the team back together and, it's almost like start it again, and pick up the pieces.
Yeah, so I
And
was
I don't want
just questioning the process.
Yeah.
Like, because at a joint meeting, the planning board is going to have our own discussion and the select board is gonna have their own discussion. So I don't know if the planning board needs to do any more refinement of our previous discussion.
I think
before
it needs to
we-
be more collaborative than just two boards going and doing their own thing.
And maybe it's a question of Liz can talk to Nick about, how we move this forward and sort of, we would like to, work with our scope, maybe, or maybe some things we don't need necessarily in that, depending on our funds and what we can afford to do. But maybe we put this on the agenda for our next meeting. I know, Sean, you're not gonna be here, but at least maybe we could get some feedback on where we are with our consultant. And we could just have it on as just a brief discussion on that prior to the 23rd. Good, okay. So this was really a good discussion. Thank you all. And we have one last final item, which that is, and Liz, if you wanna maybe just touch on this, what you know about it, the Mass Works grant for East Milton, sort of an overview. I did get to, I don't know if everyone had a chance to read through that, but
Wait, was something added here?
There was a
I
timeline
just added it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just sort of threw this together quickly because
Oh,
the
thank you.
main thing that Nick wanted you folks to know was that public component of this, the way it's laid out in the scope, it's sort of buried kind of in like item number 6. But in terms of the timeline, the listening session takes place in months 0 to 2, and then a second public session takes place somewhere between months 4 and 6. So I don't know what day 0 is. I didn't get a chance to get to that. I don't know if that's tomorrow or if it's September 1st. I honestly don't know. My sense is it's probably sometime in the next month or so that they're going to, because I know they're getting close to getting a contract finalized. And so it'll be, it'll move along. So I think the thing is just to be paying attention to, the levers where the public input and the board's input will be taken. And there's a lot of detail in the scope. I mean, it's about 6 or 7 pages long. I didn't get into a lot of that because it's pretty standard in terms of the assessment and the engineering, and I think you probably all know too that it's from the Quincy line over by the what's that restaurant over there?
Can be,
Brick and Bean, thank you. From basically from Brick and Bean to the corner of Granite, and then the two sort of branches of Mechanic and what, Franklin.
Yeah,
So
and
those are
and it
those
seems
are
to
the
extend 100 feet beyond Mechanic. I believe I saw that in here, and that I did, it goes pretty far down into East Milton Square, which would be good.
Yeah, yes,
The
yes,
one-
yes, yes. I think, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I just was gonna say, I think this is great. My only concern is a significant part of this, analysis is on the traffic. And with the Falcone building, it appears to be that the Falcone building won't even be completed when this timeline is completed. So I would think that, and I'm not sure how that would work, to really be able to understand the impacts. Already, we've seen the food center saying they're gonna start towing, they're worrying about the apartment residents parking over at the at the food center's parking. We don't know what on-street parking, we don't allow on-street parking. We don't know, the traffic flows that, sort of the impacts of 90 units is gonna be on that corner, and intersection. So I guess that would be a question for the consultants on how that's gonna be managed and how that can be predicted if they're intending to predict those impacts.
Yeah, that is a great question, Meredith. But I do know from professional
Yeah.
experience that they can model that, right? They can
They do,
predict
okay.
based upon the size of the
Okay.
units and the number of people they anticipate moving in
Okay.
there. They can model that forward, which
Okay.
I would hope be included in this. Yeah.
And, because I know that's gonna be a concern
Yeah,
of some of the
totally.
butters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So the scope of this with the sidewalks improvements along Mechanic and Franklin, that part of town needs it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure a lot of my neighbors necessarily know about this, but I
Yeah.
would anticipate them, once they get into it and get some more information, they'd be welcoming to this, I would think.
So the first public outreach is task 5, is that right?
Yeah,
And it seems like it should be, that's after final design. So it seems like
It
there
should be
should be a
earlier,
public
yeah.
outreach.
but when you look at this, the listening session, I was wondering if that's with
Oh, okay.
town,
No.
right? Conduct coordination meetings with town during project development phase. I don't know if that's,
So I think
Apartments?
I'd have to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure that there's a public session, a public listening session.
there
So
is,
there's-
yeah.
so there's-
So take
so
two
there's like-
outreach meetings, including one early stage public listening session during project
Yeah.
development. So I think to your point, the earlier that can happen, I think is better for the neighbors.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
and I just want to
sometime
make sure
we know it.
you folks are aware, because like I said, if day one is like, June 15th,
Mm-hmm.
then this is literally happening before the summer's over. So that's the type of stuff that's important, because it's going to move fast.
Yeah,
And
I-
those questions getting on the record, kind of as early as possible, then the consultants can look at the questions.
Yeah, I think that given summer, and a lot of people are busy and away in the summer, even if the DPW did an info session, which says, here's what I got a grant and a consultant on board to do, and have a map and kind of show people and say, we're going to have our first listening session, in whatever it is. But just that, because like people saw it in the paper and they didn't know what it was.
Seemed a little-
It's just like out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I think there's just been so much interest in East Milton Square in the development and in the impacts of the development and other things, that it shouldn't be after the project starts that they first have an opportunity to even learn about the details of it.
I think the way that TEC wrote their proposal, they are not doing anything with the public until they get past, because they have it as task 5.
Right.
And they write this in a sequence
survey and base mapping, that's task 1. Task 2 is project development. Task 3 is preliminary, 50% design. Task 4 is final design. And then they have public outreach and coordination. I think that's to discuss the project after it's designed, and whatever coordination they feel. And then they're into permitting. So they don't have anything. And reading through their proposal, they're leaving it to the town to do that, to do whatever public outreach. I think
I think,
there's a gap.
I don't think so. I don't think so, Sean.
No?
I think it's just the
early.
way they sort of, I
Yeah.
think it's just the way they laid it out.
Really? Well,
They're definitely on the hook to do that listening session early on and to do the public session before.
okay.
see
When I
it.
read,
The preliminary
when I,
design.
pardon me?
I didn't see it either, so.
When I read through the scope of services, it doesn't say anything about the listening session, so
Where
I'll
did you
just
see
go.
it?
So in public outreach, facilitate 2 public outreach meetings, including 1 early stage public listening session during project developments. And then if you flip back, project developments
Good.
is task 2.
What
So
page
hopefully-
what page did you read that on?
Page 5,
Page 5.
task 5, it says town coordination meetings and then public outreach. So we should confirm, Liz should confirm, we should advocate for that, but the way that I'm reading this is the early stage during project development is task 2 when they're doing the conceptual design. So
So, I guess,
Just confusing. where
it is
to
weird
put
that it's
it.
all the way in 5.
they, task 5 is meetings, public outreach and coordination, they have a value assigned to it of $35,000, so they have some time allocated to it, it's just as Hal said, but, anyhow, it should be, it wasn't clear in the previous,
Yeah.
but anyhow, that's good.
And it definitely was not clear in the article in the Times that, that seemed scary to me when reading it, that it was already to a point, but.
Right.
Yeah, should be covered.
I think
Who
the
is,
sooner that meeting gets kind of scheduled and what the expectations are, and if it can be before end of school,
Mm.
or when school releases, because that's when a lot of people vacation and other things, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you read that description of the work, it says 100 feet west of Franklin Street. So that's going back towards the highway, 100
Yeah.
feet towards the highway, and then
And
all
the-
the way to the Quincy line.
And it says even an additional 25 feet beyond that as well, just for like the improving the pavement. So when I mapped it, it looks like it's going all the way to kind of the median there, the little island that's
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
125 feet is almost to that point.
I see. And then also it's down Franklin and down
Yeah.
Mechanic.
It's on Mechanic all the way to Granite,
Yeah,
and it's down Franklin all the way to Bassett, I think.
yeah.
Those sidewalks were terrible.
Yeah.
That'd be a great
Oh, and
improvement.
the roads mechanism.
Yeah. Mechanic,
So, they're parking on the sidewalk because there's no curb
Yeah.
on Mechanic anyway.
No. Much needed. Okay. Well, this was good. So I just wanted to put this on so
Yeah.
we could understand it, so when we're asked about it, we could.
I did want to also point out here, it does say conduct coordination meetings with the Historic Commission and other relevant stakeholders as it relates to the Railway Village Historic Village.
Yeah.
Wait, Railway Village Historic Village, but I think it meant districts. 2 meetings with the Historic Commission, 1 virtual and 1 in person, 1 presentation to the Select Board.
Mhm.
It's just kind of the way where some of this information is, it's not intuitive, but.
Liz, do you know if there are any utility relocations involved in what they're proposing?
Got a question for me?
Yeah,
This would be great to bury them.
This is literally the first I've looked at this project, was just to kind of give you guys a sense of the schedule.
okay, great.
I feel like they buried some of the utilities at 440.
They did.
Yeah.
That we had
Yeah.
requested that.
I'm not even thinking that would be part of it, but I just think,
Certainly
I'm
would
just
be
thinking
nice.
about, the period of design and then the period of construction. This is a long way away, I think, it just takes time to plan these projects and it could be, a start date on this project could be, a year to 2 years away, I think. Get involved in permitting and all the issues, and if
if there are utilities involved.
Funding for it, right? There's no funding.
Well,
associated
it's,
with the
it's
construction of
even,
it,
it's even
yeah.
more important, right? Yeah, the funding, yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for putting it out there to us, Liz.
All right. So that is the last item on our agenda. And so, we wish you the best of luck in your,
You think I need luck?
Do you have to be silent on it? That's what I was thinking about.
You know, it's, to be honest with you, I think, there's plenty of people that, you know, spend some periods of time in silence.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I
you
had
don't, you
pre-submitted
don't,
it. I thought
you don't
people
have
both-
to.
You don't have to,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Yeah, no, you don't have to. I have, a priest I'm friends with who's walked a portion of this 3 times and no, yeah, but, no, it's not necessary. I think it's impossible. My daughter did. My daughter
Yeah.
did it last year and she came from Porto, so she was 170 miles. You know, I'm coming from France. And 483 miles and we won't be able to, we don't have enough time. You know, I can't spend a month in France. But we'll be somewhere around 200 miles of it, so.
be amazing.
I'm sure some of it'll be silent.
All right, so, thank you all. Liz, did you have anything else? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Nope,
So moved.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh.
And, sorry, Maggie,
Yes.
Hal,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Good night. Good night, thank
Good night.
you.
Not everyone.
Good night.
Night.